I still remember the first time I pulled someone over at night. It was supposed to be routine, nothing dramatic, nothing special. Just another stop on a quiet stretch of highway that hardly ever saw traffic after midnight. I was only a few weeks into the job back then, a rookie. My training officer had gone home sick, so they sent me out alone for the first time. I wanted to prove myself. I told myself it was just another shift, just another chance to do the right thing. But that night never left me. It was just past 2 a.m. The highway was dead quiet, the kind of silence that almost hums in your ears. My cruiser's headlights cut through the dark, and the only other light came from the pale moon hanging low above the tree line. That's when I saw it. A car up ahead swerving just slightly. Not enough to be reckless, but enough that you notice. The back tires rode over the fog line twice, dipping onto the shoulder before correcting. I thought maybe the driver was tired, or maybe drunk. Either way, it was my job to check. I flipped on my lights, those familiar blue strobes that wash over the road in pulses. And just like that, the car slowed, drifting toward the shoulder. Routine. Textbook. That's what I told myself. I parked a safe distance behind, angled the cruiser, headlights catching the car's rear license plate. I radioed it in, though dispatch didn't sound too awake at that hour. My hand hovered on the door handle for a moment before I finally stepped out. The air was cold, damp. I could see my breath curling in the glow of the headlights as I walked up toward the driver's side. Gravel crunched under my boots. The car was an old sedan. Paint faded, one tail light cracked. Nothing unusual. But as I got closer, something caught my eye. In the ditch. Not far from the rear bumper of the car, maybe 10 feet back, there was a man standing in the shadows. He wasn't moving, just standing there. At first, I thought maybe it was another passenger who'd gotten out, maybe someone who had been walking when the driver stopped. I raised my flashlight and clicked it on, shining it toward the ditch. That's when the unease hit me. The beam caught him, but he didn't flinch, didn't shield his eyes, didn't move at all. He just stood there, facing the road, arms slack at his sides. His clothes looked wrong, outdated, like something from decades back. A dark jacket, jeans that were more like work pants, boots caked in dirt. His head was dipped forward, but I could still see his face. Blank, expressionless. I cleared my throat. "Sir, you all right?" No answer. He didn't even blink. Something about him didn't look right. I can't explain it. The way the shadows fell, the way his posture seemed stiff, almost unnatural. But I shook it off. Told myself not to get distracted. My job was the driver. The guy in the ditch wasn't my concern, at least not yet. I turned back to the sedan and tapped the driver's window. It rolled down slow, and a middle-aged man with tired eyes looked up at me. "Evening, sir," I said, forcing the usual calm. "Know why I stopped you?" He nodded. "I was swerving. I'm sorry." "Long night. Just tired." His voice was steady, no slurring. His hand stayed on the wheel. He didn't look drunk, just exhausted. I asked for his license and registration. He handed them over, hands trembling slightly. That's when I noticed his eyes flicking toward the rearview mirror. Not at me, not at the lights. At the ditch, I glanced back. The man was still there, still staring. "Is he with you?" I asked. The driver's face drained of color. His knuckles went white on the steering wheel. "Don't look at him," he whispered. For a moment, I thought I misheard. "Excuse me?" The driver swallowed hard. "Just please, don't look at him." The air seemed to thicken around me. My ears rang with the sound of distant insects, the quiet hum of my cruiser's engine. I leaned in a little closer to the window. "Who is he?" The driver shook his head. His eyes looked wet, terrified. "I don't know, but he follows me every night, every road." I felt the hairs on my arms stand up. I turned, shining the flashlight fully toward the ditch. The man hadn't moved an inch, no shift in posture, no reaction at all. But now that the light was on him longer, I noticed something else. His face didn't look quite right. His skin seemed too pale, stretched almost thin. His features blurred at the edges as if my eyes couldn't focus. "Sir?" I called again, louder this time. "Are you all right?" Nothing. The driver's whisper cut through me. "Please, just give me the ticket." "Don't talk to him." "Don't." My mouth felt dry. My instincts screamed at me to end the stop, to walk away, to get back in my cruiser. But my training told me not to ignore someone standing dangerously close to an active traffic stop. So I took a step toward the ditch. The gravel shifted under my boot, crunching loud in the silence. I lifted the beam higher, fixing it right on the man's face. And that's when I realized his eyes weren't looking at the road at all. They were looking at me, straight at me. My chest tightened. For a second, I couldn't breathe. He didn't blink. Didn't sway, but the longer I held the light on him, the more I thought I saw his lips part, just slightly. As if he were about to say something. Behind me, the driver's voice broke. "Don't, please, officer. Don't listen." I froze there on the shoulder, the light trembling in my hand. The man's pale face glowing against the darkness, and then, without moving his head, his mouth opened wider. I didn't hear words. Not exactly. What came out was wrong. A low, dry sound, almost like wind through dead leaves. A hiss that seemed to scrape the inside of my skull. I staggered back, snapping the beam away, chest pounding. When I looked again, the man was gone. The ditch was empty. My flashlight beam cut across bare weeds, mud, and a broken bottle glinting under the moonlight. The driver's voice was shaking when he spoke again. "You shouldn't have looked." I stood frozen on the side of that highway, my cruiser's blue lights painting everything in flashes of color, my ears still ringing with that sound. And for the first time since I put on the uniform, I realized I wasn't in control. Not at all. That was the beginning. The first night I saw him, and the last night I ever believed a traffic stop was routine. I couldn't shake the sound. That hiss, that dry rasp that had crawled into my ears, it clung to me even after the man in the ditch was gone. My chest still felt tight, like I'd inhaled something wrong. I turned back toward the car, trying to steady myself. The driver was gripping the wheel like it was the only thing keeping him alive. His eyes darted between me and the empty ditch. "You saw him, didn't you?" His voice cracked. I didn't answer at first. My flashlight trembled in my hand. I forced it down, clicked it off, tried to act like I was still in control. "I thought I saw someone," I said. "He's gone now." The driver shook his head slowly, his breath fogging the glass. "No, he's not gone. He never leaves. He just waits." Something about the way he said it, flat, resigned, like someone who'd already lost, made the hair rise on the back of my neck. "Look," I said, trying to keep my voice steady. "If there's someone out here bothering you, I need to know. You can't just—" His hands shot up, palms out like he was trying to stop me. "No, don't talk about him. Don't even say it. You don't understand." The words lodged in my throat. I stared at him, at his pale face washed in my cruiser's blue lights. He looked like a man who hadn't slept in days. I swallowed hard. "Then tell me what I don't understand. Who is he?" The driver leaned forward, lowering his voice. His eyes flicked toward the ditch again and then back to me. "He's not a person," he whispered. "Not anymore. I don't know what he was, but once you look at him, he looks back. And once he looks at you..." He trailed off. His shoulders sagged. "You can't shake him." My mouth was dry. My heart hammered so hard I could feel it in my throat. "This some kind of joke?" I asked, though I already knew he wasn't joking. There was no humor in his eyes. "Only terror." The man gave a bitter laugh, low and broken. "Do I look like I'm laughing? Do I look like I've slept? He started showing up 6 months ago. First time I thought he was just some drifter hanging around the road. But every time I went out at night, he was there. Just watching, always in the same distance like he was tethered to me. Always silent, he rubbed his face with shaking hands. I tried ignoring him. Didn't work. I tried yelling at him. Didn't work either. And the one time I walked up close like you just did, his voice dropped to a whisper. That's when it started. My skin crawled. What started? The man looked me dead in the eyes. His lips trembled. The dreams. The whispers. I can't go anywhere in the dark without feeling him. When I drive, I see him in the ditch. When I walk, I hear his footsteps behind me. When I try to sleep, I see his face pressed against the glass. He shut his eyes tight, pressing his palms against them as if trying to blot out an image burned into his skull. I didn't know what to say. I'd dealt with drunks, addicts, liars. I'd been warned about all the excuses people would make. But this wasn't that. This wasn't a man trying to weasel his way out of a ticket. This was fear. Real fear. "Listen," I said carefully. "If this man is stalking you, there are procedures—" "Stop!" His voice cracked, desperate. "You don't get it. He's not stalking me. He's attached. Like a sickness. You saw him, didn't you? You heard him. That means he saw you too. And if he saw you—" He leaned forward, his breath fogging the glass, his voice dropping to a hoarse whisper. "Then you're part of it now." I stepped back before I realized I was moving. The night air suddenly felt sharper, colder. My cruiser's lights flickered across the asphalt in slow pulses, and every flash made the shadows shift. I wanted to turn, to shine my light into the ditch again, but my hand wouldn't move. My eyes kept flicking to the darkness anyway, searching for that pale figure, half expecting him to be there again, closer this time. But the ditch was empty. For now. The driver slumped back in his seat, covering his mouth with one hand. He looked broken, like a man who had run out of fight. "I tried telling other people," he said. "No one believes me. They think I'm crazy, but they don't see him. They didn't look." His hand dropped, and his eyes met mine again. "But you did." A long silence hung between us. The only sound was the soft click of my cruiser's engine and the hum of distant insects in the grass. I cleared my throat, trying to find some kind of grounding. "Look, you're tired. You're swerving because you haven't slept. Maybe you're seeing things." His laugh was hollow. "Seeing things doesn't leave footprints in the snow. Seeing things doesn't fog the glass where no one's sitting." I froze. My mind replayed what I'd seen just minutes earlier, the way the man's lips had moved, the sound that wasn't a sound. The driver's voice broke me out of it. "Do yourself a favor, officer. Go back to your car. Drive away. Pretend this never happened. Don't file a report. Don't talk about him again. The more you acknowledge him, the more you let him in." I felt my stomach twist. The urge to get back in my cruiser and peel out was strong, almost overwhelming. But part of me, stubborn, trained, bound by duty, refused. "I can't just leave you here like this," I said, my voice weaker than I intended. "You can," he said. His hands tightened on the wheel, and for a moment he looked almost angry. "You should. Because if you don't, then it won't just be me." The words hung heavy in the cold night air. I tried to stand tall, to pull myself together, but my hands were still trembling. I glanced once more at the ditch, heart hammering, half expecting those pale features to materialize out of the dark. Nothing. Just weeds shifting in the breeze. And yet, I swear, I could feel eyes on me, watching. I swallowed hard, backing toward my cruiser. The driver didn't move, didn't roll his window up, didn't take his eyes off the mirror. When I finally reached my car door, I paused. My chest tightened again, like something was urging me to look back one more time, and against every screaming instinct in my body, I did. At first, the ditch looked empty. Just shadows, just grass. But then, in the faint wash of my headlights, I saw it. Not movement. Not a figure, a reflection. Two pale glints like eyes. Low in the dark, they blinked once, and then they were gone. I climbed into my cruiser, hands shaking, heart racing, and shut the door harder than I meant to. The driver's car was still idling up ahead, his brake lights glowing dim red. He hadn't moved. I sat there in silence, my breath fogging the windshield, my hand still gripping the wheel. Every instinct told me to call dispatch, to report what I'd seen, but I didn't, because the driver's words wouldn't leave my head. "Don't talk about him. Don't even say it. The more you acknowledge him, the more you let him in." And in the reflection of the windshield for just a second, I thought I saw someone sitting in the back seat of my cruiser. I don't remember how long I sat there in my cruiser, staring at the red glow of the driver's brake lights. It could have been minutes, could have been longer. The world outside felt suspended, like the night itself was holding its breath. Part of me wanted to start the engine, pull out, and never look back, pretend it had all been some strange trick of the dark. But another part of me, the part that still believed in training, in duty, told me I had to finish the stop. That driver up there was still my responsibility. And whatever I had just seen, whatever I thought I saw, I couldn't just leave it hanging in the air between us. So I forced myself to move. My hands felt heavy on the wheel. My boots felt heavier still as I stepped out onto the gravel. The air was colder than before. Still. The kind of cold that gets under your skin, makes you want to pull away from it. My cruiser's lights washed everything in a blue pulse, shadows bending with every flash. I walked up toward the sedan again, trying to steady my breathing. The driver hadn't moved. His hands still gripped the wheel, his face pale, his eyes locked on the rearview mirror. I leaned down to the window. "Sir?" He didn't flinch. Didn't turn his head. "Sir, I need to—" He cut me off, voice low and hoarse. "Don't look." I froze. His knuckles were bone white against the wheel. His lips trembled, but his gaze never left that mirror. I felt my stomach twist. Against my better judgment, I followed his eyes. Slowly, carefully, I leaned forward just enough to catch the angle of the glass. And that's when I saw it. The back seat. Someone was sitting there. At first, I thought it was just a trick of the reflection. Maybe the outline of the driver doubled against the glass. But no, there was no mistaking it. A figure sat in the rear seat of the sedan, right behind the driver. His posture was the same as before, stiff, unnatural, arms resting at his sides. His head tilted forward just slightly, enough that the shadows masked his eyes. But I didn't need to see them. I felt them, watching, waiting. My chest tightened. My hand went instinctively to the butt of my weapon, but I didn't draw it. Something deep in my gut screamed not to. I took a step back, trying to clear my throat, trying to say something that sounded like control. "Sir, I need you to step out of the vehicle." The driver shook his head violently, still staring at the mirror. "No, I can't. If I move, he moves. If I acknowledge him, he gets stronger." His voice cracked on that last word. I stared harder into the back seat, my pulse pounding in my ears. The figure didn't move, didn't breathe. But the longer I looked, the more I realized I shouldn't be looking. My head throbbed. My vision blurred at the edges, like the dark was pushing in against me. I stumbled back another step, sucking in a sharp breath. When I blinked, the back seat was empty again. Gone, just the driver now. Pale and sweating, breathing fast through his nose. "Do you see?" he whispered. My mouth was dry. I didn't answer. Because in that silence, I realized something. The reflection in the mirror. It hadn't been angled right. I shouldn't have been able to see the back seat that clearly. Not from where I was standing, it felt deliberate, like he wanted me to see. I backed away slowly, heart racing, until I was at the rear of the sedan. My cruiser's lights kept flashing across the ditch, across the road, over and over. Every time the blue pulse hit, I swore I saw a figure shift just out of sight. I tried to shake it off. I needed to regain control. I circled around the car, hand brushing the cold metal as I moved to the passenger side. Maybe I could calm the driver from a different angle. When I reached the window, I leaned down again, and my blood ran cold. There was someone in the back seat. Not in the reflection. Not in some trick of light. Directly in front of me, behind the driver, through the glass, he was sitting there. The same pale face. The same slack posture. His head lifted just slightly, enough that I could see the hollows where eyes should be. Dark sockets. Empty. But somehow they still looked at me. My throat closed up. I staggered back from the car, boots slipping on loose gravel. My flashlight dropped from my hand, clattering to the ground. The driver didn't turn. Didn't react. His eyes still locked on the mirror as if he didn't dare move a muscle. But the figure in the back. He shifted, not much. Just a tilt of the head, slow, mechanical, enough to let me know he knew I was there. I scrambled for my flashlight, hand shaking as I grabbed it, fumbling with the switch. The beam snapped on, cutting through the glass. The back seat was empty. My chest heaved. Sweat dripped down my temple, cold against my skin. My hands wouldn't stop shaking. I couldn't do this. I couldn't stand there another second. I staggered back toward my cruiser, forcing myself to keep my eyes forward. Don't look at the windows. Don't look at the ditch. Don't look at anything. Just get back in the car. But even with my eyes fixed ahead, I could feel it. That weight. That stare pressing against the back of my skull, I climbed into the driver's seat and slammed the door shut. My breath fogged the glass instantly. My hands gripped the wheel so hard they hurt. The driver's car still idled up ahead, his brake lights glowing like tired eyes. I should have called dispatch. I should have done anything except sit there in silence. But all I could think about were the words he'd said. Once you look at him, he looks back. And once he looks at you, you can't shake him? I stared into my rearview mirror, my chest pounding, every nerve screaming at me not to. The back seat was empty, but I didn't believe it. Not anymore. Because in that reflection, for just a split second, I thought I saw something shift. The faint outline of a man hunched forward, watching me, and I realized with a kind of sick certainty I hadn't left him in the ditch. He was with me now. The passenger. It was close to 3 a.m. when I first saw the car. I'd been driving my usual patrol route, half bored, half exhausted, staring at the endless stretch of highway that cut through farmland and empty lots. Nights like that could drag on forever. You pray for something to happen just to break the silence. But sometimes when something finally does, you wish you'd stayed in the quiet. That's how it was that night. The car drifted into my headlights just as I crested a hill. A dark sedan, older model, the kind you barely notice anymore. At first it looked normal, steady speed, staying between the lines. But then it swerved. Not sharp, not reckless. Just a slow, lazy drift over the fog line like the driver had nodded off. I flicked my high beams, hoping to wake them up. The car corrected, then swerved again a minute later. Routine. That's all it was supposed to be. A tired driver. Maybe drunk. Maybe distracted. Nothing I hadn't handled before. I pulled in behind them, flipped on my lights, and the car slowed almost immediately. Too quickly, actually, like they were waiting for it. It rolled onto the shoulder and came to a stop beneath a broken street lamp that buzzed faintly in the cold night air. I parked behind them, angled slightly, radioed the stop, and stepped out. The crunch of gravel under my boots was the only sound. The car was idling, exhaust puffing into the air. My cruiser's lights flashed across the trunk, painting the metal in blue and red. I approached the driver's side, hand resting lightly on my belt. The driver's window was already halfway down, which put me on edge. Most people wait until you knock. Still, I leaned down, shining my flashlight inside, and that's when I froze. The driver was sitting there, hands on the wheel. But something was wrong. Something so wrong my brain struggled to process it at first. His face. He didn't have one. Not in the way you'd think. Not scarred, not injured. Just blank. Like someone had blurred it out. Smooth, pale skin stretched where eyes, nose, and mouth should have been. I blinked hard, convinced it was a trick of the light. My flashlight trembled in my hand as I angled it again, sweeping across his head. Nothing, just the faint suggestion of features beneath the skin, like a photograph smudged until it was unrecognizable. My stomach dropped. My pulse hammered in my throat. "Sir?" My voice cracked against the silence. The driver didn't move. Didn't acknowledge me. His hand stayed fixed at 10 and 2, knuckles pale in the beam of my light. I swallowed hard. My training kicked in, though it felt thin, fragile. "License and registration, please." The words sounded absurd the second they left my mouth. What was I asking? What kind of answer was I expecting from a man with no mouth? But still, his right hand moved. Slow, deliberate. He reached for the glove box, pulled out a small, worn leather wallet, and held it up. I took it with shaking fingers, not wanting to get closer than I had to. Inside was an old license. The picture caught me off guard. It was a face. A normal face. Brown hair, dark eyes, thin smile. A man in his late 30s. The name read Daniel Carr. I looked back at the driver. That face wasn't there anymore, just blank skin. I took a step back, trying to catch my breath. The night felt colder, pressing against me. "Mr. Carr," I said, forcing steadiness into my voice. "Step out of the vehicle." Nothing. He didn't move. "Sir," I said louder, "step out of the car." For a moment, I thought he wasn't going to listen. But then, slowly, the door creaked open. He swung his legs out, boots crunching on gravel, and stood. He was taller than I expected. His posture stiff. His movements wrong. like he was mimicking what a person should look like when they walk. The whole time, his face, or lack of it, pointed straight at me. I backed up, giving space. My hand brushed the butt of my weapon, but I didn't draw. I couldn't. Something in me whispered that if I pulled it, it wouldn't matter. "Turn around," I said. My voice wavered. "Hands on the hood." He did, smooth, obedient. But I swear, as he turned, I caught movement where his eyes should have been. A twitch, a ripple under the skin, like something beneath was trying to surface. My stomach churned. My breath came shallow. I approached, slow, every nerve screaming at me to stop. I laid one hand on his shoulder, the other ready to cuff. And the moment I touched him, his skin felt wrong. Cold. Not like flesh. More like paper, stretched thin over bone. He tilted his head toward me just slightly, though his hand stayed on the hood. I stumbled back, heart hammering. The world spun for a second, and I had to blink to steady myself. That's when I noticed something in my peripheral vision. The side mirror of his car. A reflection. I turned my head, and in that small square of glass, I saw his face, clear as day. Eyes, nose, mouth. The same as the license photo. But it wasn't looking at the car. It was looking at me, staring straight into the mirror, lips curved into the faintest smile. I staggered back another step, nearly tripping over my own boots. The man by the hood hadn't moved. His faceless head was still tilted in my direction, like he was waiting. But in the mirror, his reflection blinked, slow, deliberate. I snapped my eyes away, pulse racing. The air felt too thin. I could hardly breathe. My flashlight beam shook as I pointed it back at him. Blank again. Empty. I fumbled for my radio, voice breaking. "Dispatch, this is Unit 12. I need backup at..." Static. No reply, just a hiss, low and steady, filling the speaker. My throat tightened. I tried again, louder. "Dispatch, do you copy?" The static rose, sharper, almost like it was laughing. I yanked the radio off my shoulder and let it drop, my ears ringing. When I looked up, he was closer. I don't remember him moving. 1 second he was at the hood, the next he was a foot away, his faceless head inches from mine. I froze, breath caught in my chest. My flashlight beam washed over him, pale skin glowing too bright under the light. I swear I saw his skin twitch then, like something was shifting underneath, pressing forward. The faint ridges of a mouth trying to break through, the suggestion of eyes that never surfaced. I stumbled back, fumbling for my weapon now. My hands shook too hard. I couldn't even get the holster open. When I looked up again, he was gone, just gone. The space in front of me was empty. The hood of the car bare. I spun in every direction. Light cutting across the ditch, the trees, the road. Nothing. And then, behind me, the sound of a door slamming shut. I whipped around. The sedan was closed now. All the doors shut, engine humming low. Through the windshield, I saw him, sitting in the driver's seat again. Hands on the wheel, blank face turned forward, like he'd never moved. I stood there in the middle of that road, frozen, my heart thundering in my ears. Finally, I stumbled back to my cruiser, climbed inside, and locked the doors. My hands gripped the wheel until they ached. In the mirror above me, the empty road stretched dark behind. But in the reflection of my rear view, I swore I saw another face for just a second. Not his, mine, but blurred, smudged, like it was already being erased. I didn't sleep that morning. When I finally clocked out and drove home, the world felt different. Not in any way I could explain. Just hollow. Like the air itself had thinned and everything familiar was just slightly off. The car, the man, the way he vanished and reappeared, it ran circles in my mind until I couldn't tell what was real. I tried to convince myself I'd been tired, my brain playing tricks on me. That's what you do when something doesn't fit inside the rules of the world. You try to explain it away, but deep down, I knew better. A few hours later, I sat in the small room at the station, watching the dashcam footage. It was routine. Every traffic stop is recorded, and reviewing it is part of procedure. I remember staring at the screen, my coffee cold in my hand. as the cruiser's headlights lit up the dark sedan. From the camera's angle, everything looked ordinary at first. The car swerving, my lights flashing, the vehicle pulling over, even me, stepping out of my cruiser, calm, collected, like it was any other stop. But when I walked up to the driver's window, my body stiffened. I watched myself hesitate, leaning in with the flashlight, and then I saw him, the driver, his face. On the footage, it wasn't blurred or blank like I remembered. Instead, it was worse, much worse. It was like the dashcam didn't know how to capture him. The skin on his face shifted every frame, twitching, rippling, never settling into a single image. Sometimes it looked stretched, sometimes sunken. Sometimes it flashed something almost human before sliding into something else, something unrecognizable. I felt sick watching it, and then I froze the frame. For a single second, the driver's head was turned. Not toward the road, not toward his hands, toward the camera, toward me, his face in that moment. I can't even describe it. It wasn't human. It wasn't anything. Just a smear of pale skin and shadow, like he was pressed against the lens itself. I dragged the slider forward, palms sweaty. The footage went on. Me taking his license, telling him to step out. The man moving slow, stiff, everything I remembered, but then came the part that didn't match. On the tape, after I ordered him to the hood, there was a gap. A section I don't recall at all. I watched myself circle around, placing one hand on his shoulder. And then, he turned. Not his body. Not his blank head. On the footage, the driver turned his face directly toward me as if looking over his shoulder, only he didn't have to move his body. His head stayed still. It was like his face just slid across the skin until it was staring at me from the side of his skull, and his mouth, God, his mouth, it opened wide, wider than it should have, wider than bone or skin should allow, and he leaned closer, closer to me, closer to the camera. I hit pause, my stomach flipping. My reflection in the monitor looked pale, drawn, the circles under my eyes darker than ever. I pressed play again, even though every instinct screamed at me not to. The driver leaned down, close to where my ear would be. His mouth still stretched too far, his face twitching. And though the dash cam had no audio for that moment, there was movement. His lips moved. He was whispering. I couldn't hear it, but I could see it. Over and over, his mouth formed words I couldn't read. And the worst part? In the video, I didn't react. I just stood there, frozen, hand on his shoulder, eyes glazed like I wasn't even in my own body. I felt cold sweat run down my neck. The driver leaned back after several long seconds, his face melting back into that blank stretch of skin. He placed his hands on the hood again, obedient, like nothing had happened. But I knew better, because something had. I sat there for what felt like an hour, replaying that moment again and again, trying to catch a glimpse of the words, frame by frame, pausing at every blur of his mouth. It didn't help. The harder I stared, the worse it got. The movements stopped looking like speech. They started looking like something else, something not meant for human mouths. And then, for a split second, I swore the lips on screen matched mine. I shut the monitor off, my heart racing, bile rising in my throat. But the silence of the room was worse. I felt watched, even there in the safety of the station. Like if I turned too fast, I'd catch him standing in the corner, faceless head tilted, waiting for me to notice. The rest of the day blurred. Paperwork, calls, co-workers asking why I looked pale. I told them I was fine, but I wasn't. Every reflective surface I passed, I caught myself checking. Windows, mirrors, even puddles outside. At first, it was just paranoia. Nothing unusual, but then things started to shift. In the rearview mirror of my cruiser, I saw myself staring back. But my features lagged, just a half second behind my movements, like the reflection wasn't keeping up. In the window of the convenience store, I swore my eyes looked darker. Too dark, hollow, and in the bathroom mirror at the station. When I splashed cold water on my face and looked up, I almost screamed. For the briefest moment, just a blink. My reflection didn't have a mouth, just smooth skin. I stumbled back, hands gripping the sink, staring hard. It was there again. Normal, lips, nose, everything in place. But that split second stuck with me. Burrowed deep. That night, when I finally drove home, I couldn't stop glancing at the rear view. Every flash of headlights behind me made my stomach twist. And then it happened. At a red light, I sat tapping the wheel, eyes heavy, when movement in the mirror caught me. Not in the road, not in the cars, in the back seat. I froze. The mirror showed a shape. A pale face, or the lack of one, leaning forward from the shadows of the back seat. Closer. Closer. I spun around, heart in my throat. Nothing. Empty. I whipped back to the mirror. Still empty. But for those few seconds, I swear, he was there, leaning close to my ear, mouth moving, whispering something I still couldn't hear. I ran that red light. I didn't even care. I just drove faster and faster, as if I could outrun him. But you can't outrun something like that, not when it's already inside the glass. Not when it's already inside you. I've worked highway patrol long enough to know when something feels wrong. You get used to a certain rhythm out there, the late-night speeders, the drunks swerving across the line, the tired truckers pulling off to catch a nap. Most of it becomes routine, a blur of headlights and paperwork. But there are nights when that rhythm breaks. Nights that leave you cold no matter how many years you've put in. That night, it was mile marker 19. It was just past 2 in the morning when I spotted the car, a dark-colored sedan sitting on the shoulder with its hazard lights clicking. The glow of the blinkers flashed against the guardrail, steady and slow, like a heartbeat. At first, I figured it was just another breakdown. People pull over all the time. But as I got closer, something about it made the hair rise on the back of my neck. The car was running. I could hear the low hum of the engine even before I parked behind it. Exhaust puffed into the cold night air, drifting pale against the black. But the driver's door was wide open. That's what stopped me. No driver in sight. I radioed in the stop, gave my location, then stepped out. Gravel crunched under my boots as I approached, flashlight in hand. The hazards kept pulsing, throwing everything into brief flashes of orange light. "Hello?" I called out. My voice carried down the empty stretch of highway, swallowed by the dark. "Highway patrol. Anybody here?" Nothing. Just the wind skimming low over the asphalt. I came up on the driver's side. The seat was empty. The keys were still in the ignition, engine idling smooth. The first thought that crossed my mind was medical. Maybe the driver got sick, wandered off for help. Maybe they collapsed in the ditch, but the open door, the way it hung there, like someone had stepped out in a hurry that didn't sit right. I swept my light across the inside. A half-empty water bottle in the cup holder. A cell phone charger plugged into the dash. A jacket tossed across the passenger seat, but no phone. No wallet, and no sign of struggle either. I crouched down, shining my beam under the seats. Nothing but dust and a few coins. The floor mat on the driver's side was scuffed, like someone had pressed down hard on the brake before stopping. I leaned back, frowning. The hazard blinkers ticked on, off, that steady rhythm digging under my skin. I pulled out my radio. "Dispatch, this is Unit 12. I've got an abandoned vehicle at mile marker 19. Engine running, no driver in sight. I'll be checking the area. Copy 12. The dispatcher's voice crackled back. "Any sign of distress?" "Negative," I said. My eyes drifted toward the guardrail, the dark slope leading down into trees. Doors open. "Driver's not here. Might have gone looking for help. I'll advise." I clipped the radio back and stood still for a moment, listening. And that's when I noticed it. The night was too quiet. No cicadas. No rustle of leaves. Not even the distant hum of a semi in the distance. Just the engine purring and the blinkers ticking. I forced myself to move. I angled my light down the embankment, sweeping across dry grass and scattered brush. Nothing. I walked around to the passenger side. That door was shut, locked from the inside. I tried the rear, same thing. Only the driver's side left open. I leaned in closer this time, running the beam over the dash. That's when I saw it. The clock on the dashboard read 2:13 a.m. Nothing unusual about that, except the numbers flickered faintly like the screen couldn't hold steady. 2, 13, 2, 13, and for half a second, I swore the numbers shifted. 2, 19, the marker number. I blinked hard, leaned in closer. The screen showed 213 again, steady now. My own tired eyes playing tricks. That's what I told myself. Still unease curled in my gut. I pulled out my notepad, started writing down the plate number when something made me stop. In the corner of my vision, inside the rearview mirror, there was movement. I froze, slowly raising my light. The mirror reflected the back seat, empty, but I swear, just for a moment I'd seen someone sitting there, a shape, too quick to catch. My throat went dry. I pulled the door open wider, shining my light inside, angling it across the back seat, empty. Just the jacket on the passenger side and the faint smell of something chemical, like cleaning fluid, sharp in my nose. I backed out, scanning the road now, the ditches, the trees. The air pressed heavy against me, colder than before, and then, faintly, I heard it. A click, not the hazard lights. Something else, from inside the car. I leaned in again, heartbeat hammering. My beam swept across the dash, the seats, the console. The glove compartment hung slightly open now. Just an inch. I know it hadn't been like that before. I would have noticed. I reached in, hesitating, then pulled it open the rest of the way. Empty. Completely empty. Not a single paper. Not a single item inside. And yet, the smell of that chemical was stronger here. I shut it fast, stepping back. Every nerve in me telling me to leave. But I couldn't. Not without knowing where the driver went. I circled around the car one last time. Beam cutting across the road, the grass, the rail. That's when my light caught something. Footprints, bare feet. They led away from the car. Across the gravel shoulder, straight toward the dark stretch beyond the guardrail. I crouched low, running the light along them. Clear as day. Fresh. Pressed deep into the dirt like whoever it was had been running. I straightened, staring into the dark beyond the rail. The footprints vanished into the trees, swallowed by the black. The hazards ticked behind me, steady, steady, steady. And I realized, standing there, that whoever had been driving that car, they hadn't been walking away when they left. They'd been running, and the open door wasn't an invitation. It was a warning. The thing about working patrol is you never really feel alone out there. Not completely. Even in the dead of night with nothing but your headlights and an empty stretch of road, you've always got dispatch in your ear. That steady voice on the other end of the radio keeps you tethered. Reminds you that someone else knows where you are, that someone else is listening. That's why the call shook me so badly. It came in less than an hour after I found the empty sedan. I'd just finished walking the perimeter again, shining my light into the trees, trying to decide if I should wait for backup or head down the embankment alone. My radio hissed, then crackled to life. "Unit 12, stand by," dispatch said. "We just had an incoming 911 female caller. Something about mile marker 19. I froze. My eyes drifted to the sign just ahead, glowing faint green in the sweep of my cruiser's lights. 19. I thumbed the mic. Copy. What was the nature of the call? There was a pause. Too long of a pause. Then the dispatcher's voice came back, tight, like she didn't want to say it out loud. She was screaming. The hair stood up on my neck. I pressed the mic again. Screaming what? Another pause. Paper shuffling in the background. Then, she said, "Don't let him out. Don't let him out of the car." I felt my chest tighten. I turned slowly, looking at the sedan sitting there on the shoulder. Hazard still blinking. Engine still humming low. Open driver's side door, empty seat. I forced a swallow down my throat. "Do you have playback of the call?" I asked. "Affirmative," dispatch said, voice low. "Patching it through now." The radio clicked, and then the static gave way to a rush of noise. At first, all I heard was chaos. A woman's voice, sharp and panicked, overlapping itself. Breathing fast. Words breaking apart between screams. "Mile marker 19, oh God, he's..." There was a crash, like the sound of something hitting metal. He's not supposed to be out! Don't let him out of the car! Her voice broke on that last word, so raw it made my chest ache. Then came another sound. Not her. Footsteps. Slow. Crunching in gravel. Steady, too steady. The dispatcher's voice came back, shaky now. We had the line open for 28 seconds before it cut out. That was the last we heard. I couldn't move. I just stood there, staring at the car, the words ringing in my skull. Don't let him out of the car. But the door was open. The seat was empty, and those footprints in the dirt, they hadn't been walking. They'd been running. I forced myself to breathe, thumbed the mic again. My voice came out rough. Dispatch, you heard those footsteps, right? There was hesitation on the line. Then, affirmative. Sounded close, like someone was right up on her. But there wasn't any engine noise, no passing vehicles, nothing else on the call. Silence stretched out. Both of us listening to the nothing that followed. Finally, I said, "Do we have an ID on the caller?" "Working on it," she said. "Cell pinged off the tower 2 miles south of you. That's all we've got so far." My flashlight beam wavered as I swept it across the road again. My throat was dry, my tongue heavy. She'd said don't let him out, but the driver had been gone when I arrived, which meant whatever she was talking about, whatever she was screaming about, it had already happened, and maybe I was standing in the middle of it now. I told myself to stay calm, to stick to training, secure the vehicle, call for backup, but the words on the radio kept replaying in my head, drowning everything else out. I walked back to the sedan, slow, cautious. My boots crunched the gravel, echoing too loud in the silence. The hazards blinked on. Off, on, off. I leaned inside again, shining my light across the dash, the seats, the mirrors. And that's when I noticed it. The phone charger. It was still plugged into the dash, cord dangling. But the end piece, the part where a phone should have been, was warm. I reached out, touched it. Warm. Like something had been charging just minutes ago. I pulled my hand back fast, heart hammering. She'd said mile marker 19. She'd said the car, this car. I stepped back, staring at it like it might come alive right there on the shoulder. The engine purred. The blinkers ticked. And in that moment, I felt certain of two things. Whoever she was, she'd been inside this car, and whatever had chased her out, it wasn't gone. Not yet. I pulled out my radio again, voice cracking. "Dispatch, I need a trace on that number as soon as possible. And send back up to my location now. Something's not right here. Copy that, 12, she said, trying to sound steady, but her voice carried a tremor. Nearest unit is 20 minutes out. 20 minutes. Out there, 20 minutes might as well be forever. I stared at the footprints again, leading into the dark. Bare feet, running hard, and I thought about those footsteps in the gravel on the call. How close they'd sounded, like someone was following right behind her. I swallowed, gripping my light tighter. The longer I stood there, the more I felt it. That quiet pressure, that heaviness in the air. Like I wasn't alone on that stretch of highway. Like something was watching me, just out of sight. I told myself it was nerves, fatigue, adrenaline. But when the wind shifted and the hazard lights ticked again, I swore I heard something faint beneath the sound. Another crunch, like a footstep. Slow, steady, right behind me. I spun, light cutting across the empty highway. Nothing there, just asphalt stretching into black. But my gut told me otherwise. The 911 call replayed in my mind, her voice breaking as she screamed. Don't let him out. Don't let him out of the car. I wanted to believe she'd escaped, that she'd gotten far enough to find help. But deep down, I already knew the truth. The way she screamed, it wasn't the sound of someone getting away. It was the sound of someone who knew they weren't going to. And now, I was standing exactly where she had been when she made that call. The gravel shifting under my boots, the hazards ticking in the dark, the car still idling, waiting, like it hadn't been abandoned at all, like it was still holding on to something. And I realized, standing there under that pale green mile marker sign, that maybe the car wasn't empty after all. Maybe it never had been. It was after that call that I noticed him. The night had settled thick around me. The sedan still idled by the shoulder, hazards flickering like a dying heartbeat. I stood there too long, staring at it, trying to work out whether to wait for backup or start searching on my own. Then I saw movement out past the ditch. At first, I thought it was just the grass shifting in the wind. But then I caught it again, a pale blur out in the field. A figure moving slow like someone was waving an arm. My first thought was that it had to be her, the woman from the 911 call. Maybe she'd run through the field instead of down the road. Maybe she'd gotten turned around. I raised my flashlight, squinting against the glare of the beam. And that's when I saw him. A man, standing knee-deep in the tall weeds, maybe 30 yards out. He wasn't running. He wasn't hiding. He was just standing there, one arm raised, hand swaying side to side in a weak wave. For a second, relief actually hit me. Finally, someone alive. Someone who could explain what the hell was happening. I started toward him. The grass crunched under my boots as I slid down the ditch, crossed the gravel, and stepped into the field. My light caught his outline again. Thin frame, slouched shoulders, head tilted just slightly too far forward. "Sheriff's Department," I called out. My voice cracked louder than I meant. "You all right? Do you need medical?" The man didn't answer. He just kept his hand lifted, that weak little wave, like he was too tired to do anything else. I pushed further into the grass, my eyes locked on him. And the closer I got, the more wrong he looked. His proportions didn't add up. His legs seemed too long, his arms too stiff. The beam of my light hit his chest, and for a second, I swore I saw it bow inward like he'd been crushed. I slowed my steps. Something in me, the same part that had flared up when I found the empty car, was screaming now, but I couldn't turn back. "Sir," I said again, softer this time. "Can you hear me?" He moved then, not much. Just a small tilt of his head toward me, and that's when I saw it. His face. It wasn't blurred, not like the driver's had been. It was worse. It was stretched, like someone had pulled it down over his skull. His mouth hung too wide, his eyes too far apart. The skin didn't move right. It was like looking at a mask someone had tried to make human and failed. My stomach dropped. He raised his other arm now, slow, mechanical. Both hands swayed at me. That same weak wave, side to side, like he wasn't trying to flag me down, like he was mimicking me. I stopped dead, the light trembling in my hand. And in that silence, I realized something. The grass around him wasn't moving. The wind was still brushing my arms, pulling at my shirt, but the stalks around him didn't sway. They were rigid, stiff, and yet he swayed. I took a step back. That was when his head jerked. A sudden violent twitch, snapping to the side like it had been yanked by invisible hands. His body followed a second later, all wrong, like the bones didn't fit together. And then he started toward me, not fast, not even steady, just dragging one foot after the other, arms still raised in that same broken wave. Every step, his shape seemed to shift. One second he was tall and gaunt, the next hunched and short. My eyes couldn't hold him in place. It was like trying to track smoke. "Stay where you are!" I shouted, but my voice broke. He didn't stop. I wanted to reach for my weapon, but something deep down told me it wouldn't matter. That I wasn't looking at a man anymore. The only thought in my head was the woman's voice from that call. Don't let him out of the car, and here he was, walking out of the field like he'd been waiting for me. I stumbled back toward the ditch, trying to keep my light on him, but every time I blinked, he looked different. Taller, shorter, arms too long, head too low, like reality couldn't decide what shape he was supposed to be. By the time I hit the edge of the gravel, my breath was tearing out of me. I risked one last look. He was closer now, much closer, and he'd stopped waving. His arms were spread wide like he was waiting for me to come to him. His mouth stretched open, but no sound came out. Just that awful shape, wide and empty. I scrambled backward up the ditch, gravel biting through my knees, and turned toward the cruiser. For a moment, I thought I heard him behind me, the crunch of his steps in the grass. But when I reached the road and whipped around, the field was empty. No man. No movement. Just tall weeds, swaying easy in the wind again, like nothing had been there at all. I stood in the middle of the highway, gasping, my flashlight shaking in my grip. The hazards on the sedan blinked, ticking louder than ever in the silence. I told myself I'd imagined it. Stress, exhaustion. Maybe the panic from the call was bleeding into my head. But when I lowered my light, I saw them, footprints, pressed deep into the dirt, leading out from the weeds, bare feet, long strides, and they didn't fade. They ended right at the edge of the gravel, right where I'd been standing. I didn't tell the whole story in my official report. I wrote down the basics. Found an abandoned vehicle at mile marker 19, hazards flashing. No sign of the driver. Investigated the area, found nothing. Recommended a tow. That was it. The rest, the man in the field, the footprints that stopped where I had been standing, I kept to myself. Some things you don't write down, not unless you want a mandatory psych eval stapled to your record, but keeping it inside didn't mean I could forget it. The next morning, after I finally caught a few hours of sleep, I stopped by a diner on the edge of town. I must have looked worse than I thought because the waitress, a gray-haired woman with tired eyes, asked me if I was all right. I told her where I'd been working the night before. Just small talk, really. I mentioned the mile marker, and the second I did, her whole face changed. She set down the coffee pot and leaned close, her voice dropping. "You stopped there?" I shrugged. "Car was abandoned." "Standard procedure." She shook her head, almost like she was angry at me for saying it. "Never stopped there. Not at night. Not ever." Before I could ask what she meant, she walked off, muttering something under her breath. Later, I mentioned it to one of the older deputies back at the station. He gave me the same look, half pity, half warning. "You don't know about 19? He asked. I told him I didn't. He leaned back in his chair, chewing at his lip, like he wasn't sure if he should say anything. Then he sighed. "Cars have been disappearing there for years. Not all the time, not enough to make the news, but enough that folks around here talk. Always at night. Always right around that marker. They'll find a car with the lights on, doors open, but the driver's gone. No blood, no struggle. Just gone." I tried to laugh it off, but my chest felt heavy. "You telling me it's haunted?" He didn't laugh back. He just said, "I'm telling you to keep driving if you ever see someone pulled over there again." That night, I couldn't sleep. Every time I closed my eyes, I saw him. The man in the weeds, his arms swaying, his face stretched wrong, and then the dream started. The first night I was back on patrol. Dark highway, no stars, just the steady hum of the cruiser. And then I saw headlights appear in the mirror, bright and blinding, pulling up fast behind me. When I turned to look, there was nothing, just black road. I woke up drenched in sweat. The second night was worse. This time, the headlights stayed on me, trailing close, never passing. I pulled over in the dream, stepped out, and waited. And as I stood there on the shoulder, the beams washed over me, freezing me in place. But no car came. It was just light. 2 perfect circles of light, floating there in the dark, and then slowly, they rose off the ground. When I woke, my chest hurt like I'd been holding my breath too long. By the third night, I stopped pretending it was just stress. In that dream, I was parked at mile marker 19. My own cruiser was idling, hazard lights ticking. I was sitting in the driver's seat, staring at the empty sedan in front of me, and in the rearview mirror, I saw him. Not in the field this time. Not in the weeds. He was sitting in the back seat of my own car, head tilted forward, arms still swaying, but in the mirror, his hands weren't waving anymore. They were reaching. When I jolted awake, I could swear the cabin smelled like earth and gravel. I tried to tell myself it was my imagination. That maybe I just heard too many stories, let it bleed into my dreams, but I knew better. Because every morning when I walked out to the cruiser, I found dirt tracked across the back floorboard, like someone had been riding along with me. I stopped mentioning it at work. What was I supposed to say? That I was being followed by something from a patch of weeds off a forgotten mile marker? That every night I dreamed of headlights pulling up behind me and every morning I found more dirt in my car? No, nobody would believe that. But the locals believed it in their own way. Word got around fast. People started avoiding me at the diner. I overheard them whispering, saying I was marked now, saying I'd looked too close, and the more I heard, the more pieces I put together. There were stories, old ones, about people vanishing on that stretch of road going back decades. One woman swore her brother had disappeared there in the 80s. his truck left idling with the door open. Another said her grandfather never came home from work one night in '65, and the only thing they found was his hat in the ditch near mile marker 19. None of it was in the official records. Just rumors, passed down like warnings. But they all ended the same way. Don't stop at 19. Don't look in the field. Don't answer if someone waves. I tried to tell myself that as long as I stayed away, I'd be fine. That maybe whatever I'd seen would forget me, move on. But then the dreams changed again. Now the headlights don't stay behind me. Now they pass. I see them sweep by on the left the way a car should. But when I glance to the side, I never see a vehicle. Just light, white light crawling up the lane beside me, and always, it slows until it matches my speed, until it hangs there right beside my window. I never look. I don't dare, but I feel it. Someone sitting there, keeping pace with me, waiting. Some nights I wake up gasping, convinced I'll open my eyes and see those lights bleeding through the curtains. I've stopped driving that stretch of highway. I take the long way around now, even if it adds an hour to my patrol. I can't risk it, but it doesn't matter, because it's not just there anymore. I see the lights everywhere, at home, through the blinds, in town, reflecting in store windows. Even when I close my eyes, the glow burns behind them, hovering, steady, patient. And sometimes just before I wake, I hear the sound that takes me back to that night, the crunch of gravel, footsteps, getting closer. Every time I tell myself the same thing, that it's not real, that I'll be fine as long as I don't stop. But deep down, I know the truth. I did stop. And whatever I let see me that night at mile marker 19 hasn't let go since. I've been driving rigs for a long time now. Long enough to know the loneliness of the open road. The way your mind can play tricks on you when it's just you. The hum of the tires. And miles of darkness stretching out ahead. I've heard my share of strange stories from other truckers. Phantom hitchhikers, ghost lights, voices on the radio that don't belong to anyone. I always figured most of it was talk. The kind of things tired men tell to break up the silence. But there was one night, a few years back, that I stopped laughing at those stories. I was on I-40, heading east through a stretch of nothing. It was after midnight, one of those nights where the stars look sharp enough to cut you. My CB was on, like it always is, scanning through the chatter. Usually it's just noise. Truckers checking on each other, swapping road conditions, joking around to stay awake. But that night, the channel went dead quiet for a long time. So quiet, I thought maybe my radio had cut out. And then I heard it. Breaker. Breaker 19. The voice came through fuzzy at first, full of static. A man's voice, low, strained. I could hear his breath more than his words. This is... He coughed. Hard, like something was in his throat. This is Big Green. Any drivers got a copy? Anybody out there? I didn't recognize the handle, but that wasn't strange. There are thousands of us out there, all with our own nicknames. I grabbed my mic. Copy that, Big Green. This is Silverjack. I got you. You okay, driver? For a moment, all I heard was static. Then the man's voice came back, more panicked now. I can't get out. Door won't open. His breath hitched, quick and sharp. Something's in here with me. That woke me up fast. Say again? I asked, leaning close to the radio. He coughed again, wheezing like his chest was caving in. It's in the cab. I locked the doors, but it's already inside. Oh God, it's in the sleeper. I froze. My eyes flicked to my own sleeper cab in the mirror. Empty, dark, just the way it should be. Where you at, Big Green? I asked, trying to keep my voice steady. What mile marker? His answer came broken, the words swallowed by static. 19 or 90. I don't... His voice cracked into a sob. I can hear it breathing. Now, I've heard plenty of guys joke around on the CB. Sometimes you get pranksters trying to spook rookies. But this didn't sound like that. This sounded real. Stay calm, driver, I said. Talk to me. What do you see? There was a long silence. Then, just barely, I heard him whisper, "It doesn't have a face." The hair on my arms stood straight up. The channel went dead again, just the hiss of open static. I tried calling him back over and over, but nothing. Then, maybe a full minute later, the speaker crackled again, But this time, it wasn't words. It was the sound of someone pounding, fists slamming against metal. The heavy, hollow thud of a man beating his own cab walls. "Help!" he screamed. His voice was high and ragged now, nothing like before. "It's got me! It's got me!" And then a crash, like the mic had fallen, skittering across the floor. The last thing I heard was his breath, fast and wet, like he was choking. And beneath it, something else. A second sound, low, guttural, like an animal growl, buried deep in the static. Then nothing. The channel went quiet. I drove another 50 miles that night, listening, waiting, calling out every few minutes. No answer. No one else even mentioned it. Like I'd been the only one tuned in. By dawn, I'd almost convinced myself it was some kind of nightmare I'd had behind the wheel, a hallucination from being overtired. But when I stopped at a truck stop outside Amarillo, I asked around. "Anyone ever hear of Big Green?" One old-timer put down his coffee and looked at me long. "You heard him too?" he asked. My stomach turned. "What do you mean?" He didn't answer right away. He just stared at the wall, jaw tight, like he was trying to decide whether to open his mouth. Finally, he said, "Big Green's been dead 20 years. I laughed, but it came out shaky. "Come on." He didn't laugh back. Rolled his rig off an embankment near Tulsa. They found him crushed in the cab. Folks say sometimes you still hear him on the radio calling for help. Always the same way. Always scared. I wanted to call him a liar. Wanted to say it was just a story to mess with me. But I'll never forget the sound of those fists pounding metal, or the way that man's voice broke when he said it didn't have a face. And I'll never forget the silence that followed, stretching on and on like the whole road had gone empty. Since that night, I don't keep the CB running after midnight. Some drivers call me paranoid. They say the airwaves are the only thing that keeps you sane on the long hauls. But me, I'd rather take the silence, because I know what's waiting on the other end if I ever hear that voice again. And if you ever do, if you're driving out there alone and you hear a man calling himself Big Green, don't answer him, just keep driving. I didn't want to tell this part. Truth is, I've tried to leave it buried, shoved down in that place you keep things you can't explain. But it comes back, especially at night, when the road is empty and the static hums in my ears. A month after that first transmission from Big Green, I told myself it was over. I'd been shaken, sure, but time has a way of sanding the edges off fear. I went back to my normal routes, normal hours. Tried to forget. But one night, not far from Flagstaff, I heard him again. It started the same way. Dead silence on the CB, then that hiss of static, faint but steady. And then, out of nowhere, "Breaker, Breaker 19. This is Big Green. Anybody out there?" The voice was identical. Same strain, same hitch in the breathing, like he'd been running. Only this time, he didn't sound far away. He didn't sound buried in static like before. He sounded close, too close. I snatched up my mic without thinking. "Silverjack here? I've got you, Big Green. Where you at?" There was a pause. A long one. Then I heard my own voice answer back. Not his, mine. "This is Silverjack," it said. My voice, word for word, tone for tone. "I've got you," I froze. My hand went slick on the mic. It was me. Not just someone who sounded like me, but exactly me. Like I was listening to a recording of myself, I dropped the mic. The radio popped and crackled. And then, my voice again breaking, frantic. "Help me! Somebody please, help me! It's in the cab! I can't get out!" Every hair on my neck lifted. Those were the same words I'd heard from Big Green the first time. But it was me saying them, not him. I slammed the CB off. Just cut it dead. But the sound didn't stop. The speaker kept crackling, kept spitting out my own voice, distorted, begging. "Door won't open. It's already inside. I swear to you, I could hear my own ragged breath coming out of that little box, sharp and wet, like I was choking. And then the pounding started, just like before, heavy fists slamming against metal, the hollow, desperate sound of someone trapped. But this time it wasn't far away. This time it was coming from my own rig, from the sleeper right behind me. I didn't look. Couldn't. I just gripped the wheel tighter and pressed my foot down, the engine roaring as I tried to outrun something I knew was already with me. I drove like that for miles, My own voice screaming out of the CB, begging for help, while that pounding rattled the walls of my cab. At some point, I must have blacked out. Maybe I drove on autopilot. Maybe I lost time. All I know is when I came to, red and blue lights were flashing in my mirrors. A patrol car had pulled me over. The officer came up to my window, his flashlight cutting through the dark. "Sir, you okay? You've been swerving all over the road. I could barely get words out." There's someone in my cab." He gave me a look, one part concern, one part suspicion. Step out of the vehicle. My knees almost buckled when I climbed down. My ears were ringing with that last echo from the CB, my own voice crying, "It doesn't have a face." The officer called for backup. 2 more units arrived. They searched my truck top to bottom, pulled open the sleeper, checked every inch. Nothing. No one. The cab was empty. But the CB was still alive. The officers heard it too. Heard the crackle, the bursts of sound. At first it was just static. Then slowly the voice bled through again. And it was mine. They stood there, flashlights on the radio, while my own voice spilled out, soft and broken. "Help me. Please help me." It won't let me go. One of the officers turned pale. Another muttered something under his breath and stepped back. I couldn't move. Couldn't breathe. The last thing the radio said before cutting back to static was my name. Jack. Not Silverjack, not a handle. Just my real name drawn out like a whisper. After that, nothing. Just dead air. The officers didn't write me a ticket. Didn't say much at all. One of them told me I should get some rest. Maybe have the CB looked at, like it was just faulty equipment. But I saw their faces. They heard it. They knew. I didn't drive the rest of that night. Parked at a rest area and sat in the cab with the engine off, the silence pressing in on me. I thought about smashing the CB, ripping it out of the dash and throwing it into the dirt, but I didn't. Somehow, I couldn't. Like if I destroyed it, whatever was on the other end would find a new way to reach me. I sat there until dawn, staring at the empty road, waiting for headlights that never came. Since then, the CB stays off, always. But sometimes when I'm parked for the night, when the hum of the highway dies down and the dark settles heavy, I swear I can hear it again, not through the speaker, not through static, but faint, from the walls of the cab itself. My own voice, begging for help I'll never get. And every time I hear it, I know. One night, the pounding will start again. And when it does, I won't wake up outside the rig with flashing lights in my mirror. I'll wake up inside, screaming, just like him, just like Big Green. Because whatever took him, it's coming for me too. And maybe it already has. I've been a cop for 12 years. Most nights, it's the same routine. Speeders, drunks, domestic calls. You start to think you've seen it all, that nothing on the road can surprise you anymore. That's what I thought. Until the night I pulled over the kid with the empty back seat. It was just past midnight on Route 67, the stretch between Milford and the state line. No houses, no lights, just woods pressing in tight on both sides, black as ink. I was running radar, half awake, sipping on gas station coffee when the blur of headlights tore past me. 80 in a 55. Car weaving just enough to make me sit up. I flipped the lights, pulled out, and caught up quick. It was an old Honda Civic, paint dull, muffler rattling like it might fall off. The driver slowed but didn't pull over right away. He drifted a good half-mile before finally easing onto the shoulder. That hesitation, it didn't sit right with me. I got out, adjusted my belt, and walked up on the driver's side. Standard stuff. My flashlight beam cut through the car, and that's when I saw him. A kid. Couldn't have been more than 17, maybe 18. Skinny, pale, wide-eyed. His hands were shaking on the wheel. "License and registration," I said. He fumbled with his wallet, dropped it, cursed under his breath, picked it back up. His voice cracked when he spoke. "Officer, please, can you stay here a second? Don't go back to your car. That stopped me cold. Kids don't usually beg you to stay. They try to explain, apologize, sometimes cry. But this one, he looked like he'd just crawled out of a nightmare." "What's going on?" I asked. He licked his lips, eyes darting to the rearview mirror, then back to me. "You can't see it, right?" "You don't see anybody?" I leaned down, shone my light into the back. The seat was empty. Just some fast food wrappers and a hoodie crumpled in the corner. "No one's back there," I said. His knuckles tightened around the wheel until they went white. That's what it wants, for you not to see it. I felt the hair rise on the back of my neck. Son, you been drinking? He shook his head so fast it was almost a twitch. No, I swear. I wasn't speeding because I'm drunk. I was trying to get away from it. From what? He swallowed, eyes flicking again to the mirror. The passenger? I glanced at the back seat again, half expecting someone to pop up. Nothing, just shadows. Look, I said, keeping my voice even. You're alone in this car. You understand me? No one's back there. His breathing hitched, chest rising and falling like he'd been running a marathon. That's what my dad said too. Last time? The kid nodded, slow, mechanical. It rides with us. Not every night, but sometimes. Always after dark. Always when the road is empty. My dad told me to never stop, no matter what. But it made me stop tonight. Something about the way he said it. Flat. Hopeless. Like he was reciting a rule he'd lived with his whole life. Sent a shiver through me. All right, I said. Why don't you step out of the vehicle? No. His voice cracked sharp. If I get out, it'll get mad. Who will? He finally turned and looked at me full on. His eyes were wet, glassy, but dead serious. The man in the back seat. I looked again. Empty. But the way he said it, I believed that he believed it. My training was screaming at me. Kids probably high, paranoid, maybe on something laced. But another part of me, the quiet part I don't like to admit exists, whispered something else. What if he wasn't? The woods around us were silent. Not a single cricket, no wind. Just the distant ticking of the Civic's engine cooling down. And then, soft as breath, I thought I heard something from inside the car. Not movement, not words. Just the faintest sound of someone exhaling. I took a step back. The kid's eyes locked onto mine. You heard it too. My mouth went dry. I shined my light again, sweeping the back seat, the floor, the ceiling. Empty, but my gut twisted. All right, I said, forcing my voice steady. You're gonna sit tight. I'm gonna run your information, then we'll figure this out. He started shaking his head, panic rising. Don't leave me. Please don't leave me with it. His voice cracked so hard it almost broke me. I hesitated, then nodded. Fine, stay calm. Just keep your hands where I can see them. I stepped back toward my cruiser, but before I could turn away, he whispered something that stopped me cold. Don't look at it in the mirror. I froze. What? He pointed weakly at his rear view. His face looked hollow in the glow of my flashlight. That's how it shows itself. Not straight on. Only in the mirror. I didn't answer. Just walked back slow, every step heavy. When I slid into my patrol car, I didn't look up right away. Didn't check my own rear view. My hands were trembling on the wheel, and for the first time in years, I realized I didn't feel safe inside my own cruiser. I ran his license. Clean. No record. Local kid. 17. Just like I guessed. I stared at the screen, thinking about my next move. Then, a thud. Soft, from behind me. I froze. Another thud. This time louder, like someone had kicked the inside of my back door. I turned, quick flashlight beam cutting across the rear of my cruiser. Empty. But in that split second, my eyes flicked up, and in the mirror, I swear to God, I saw a face. Not clear. Not whole. Just the suggestion of one. Pale, blurred, pressed too close, like it was leaning in from the dark, and then it was gone. Just me. Just my own reflection, wide-eyed and sweating. I sat there too long, heart pounding until the kid honked his horn. I jumped, nearly dropped the light. When I looked, he was staring at me through his windshield. Not angry, not smug, just sad, like he knew I'd seen it too. I walked back, forced myself to hand him his license. Slow it down. Get home safe. He nodded, gripping the wheel tight, eyes still glued to that mirror. When I stepped back, he pulled onto the road, taillights shrinking fast into the black. I stood there alone on the shoulder, my cruiser humming behind me, the woods pressing in like a wall, and for just a second, in the shine of my headlights, I thought I saw a shadow in the back of that car, something tall, something that shouldn't have fit. Then it was gone, just the empty road, and the sound of my own breath. People think the job gets easier the longer you do it, that you build a wall around yourself, that the things you see stop getting under your skin. But that's not how it works, at least not for me. The night with the kid in the Civic, at first I told myself I could forget it. Write it off as nerves, paranoia, maybe drugs. My mind playing tricks on me. But deep down I knew better. I'd seen it too. Not with my eyes, not directly, but in the mirror. And once you see something like that, you can't just shove it down and pretend it didn't happen. For days, I couldn't stop thinking about his warning. Don't look at it in the mirror. I avoided mine as much as I could. Shaved in the morning with my head tilted, barely glancing at the reflection. Drove my patrol car at night with the mirror tilted up toward the ceiling. A stupid thing, maybe, but I couldn't shake it. Then, about a week later, I got another stop. And this one, it still crawls through my head when I try to sleep. It was a little after 2 a.m., same stretch of highway. Route 67. I almost never saw cars that late, so when headlights came up fast behind me, I noticed. A silver Toyota this time, newer model, cruising over the limit by at least 15. I slowed, let him pass, then hit the lights. He pulled over quick, no hesitation. That should have calmed me. But the second I walked up on that car, I felt it again. The same weight in the air. Like the silence was holding its breath. The driver was a man in his 30s. Looked tired, like he'd been on the road a long time. Hand steady, polite enough. License came back clean. Everything about him was ordinary, but as I shone my flashlight into the car, I noticed something that stopped me cold. The passenger seat belt. It was buckled in, tight, not hanging loose, not clicked by mistake. It was pulled across, snug, with the lap belt pressed down against the empty fabric of the seat. And worse, there was an indentation. A deep one. The kind you only get when someone's sitting there, their weight pressing into the cushion. But the seat was empty. I leaned closer, my beam tracing the outlines. That wasn't all. The passenger side window, just the one by the seat, was fogged over with frost. A thin film clinging to the glass, as if cold air was seeping from inside the seat itself. The driver followed my eyes. His face went pale. You see it too?" he whispered. For a moment I couldn't answer. My mouth went dry and all I could hear was the thudding of my own heart. "I see the seat belt," I said finally. My voice sounded wrong, even to me. His grip tightened on the steering wheel. "Don't say it out loud, please. Don't acknowledge it." The words came out almost the same way the kid had said them. A plea, a warning. I felt the same cold ripple through me I had that first night. "What's going on here?" I asked. He shook his head. His knuckles were white. "You don't want to know. I need you to explain." He looked at me then, eyes wide and wet like he was about to break. "It rides with me, same as it rides with others. Doesn't talk, doesn't move, just sits there. But if you admit you see it, if you look too long, it notices." I took a step back from the window, but I couldn't stop staring at that indentation. It was too clear, too defined. Like someone invisible was sitting there, staring straight ahead. The frost thickened while I watched, creeping in slow across the glass like fingers dragging down the window. I tried to clear my throat, but the sound caught. Has it been there long?" "Since I left the city," he said. His voice was flat, resigned. I didn't even notice at first. Sometimes you don't. You don't feel the extra weight until you stop for gas or look too close. But when I glanced at the mirror, I saw its face. A long silence stretched between us. The engine idled, headlights spilling weak light onto the black trees. And still, that seatbelt stayed tight. I forced myself to breathe, to push words out. "What did you see?" He didn't answer at first. His chest rose and fell, fast and shallow, like he was fighting to hold it together. Finally, he said, "It doesn't have one face. It shifts. Sometimes it looks like me. Sometimes like someone I knew years ago. Sometimes like nothing at all. Just a blur." "But the eyes!" He broke off, shaking his head violently, like the memory itself burned. I thought about the faceless driver. The kid's warning, and now this man, saying the same things in the same hollow voice. I wanted to tell him to pull the car over, to get out, to sit in the back of my cruiser while we sorted this out. But the words stuck. Deep down, I knew he wouldn't leave that seat occupied. You've got two choices, I said finally, though I wasn't sure who I was trying to convince, him or myself. Either we figure out what this is or you keep driving with it beside you. He gave a bitter laugh, short and broken. Figure it out? You don't figure it out, officer. You just survive it. You pray it doesn't follow you home. My skin prickled, my hand unconsciously resting on the butt of my gun. But what good would that do? How do you point a weapon at something you can't see? I leaned down again against my better judgment and looked harder at that seatbelt. The indentation seemed deeper now, the frost thicker. And for just a second, I swore I saw the faintest shape pressing into the leather, the curve of a shoulder, the hint of a head tilted toward me. I jerked back. The driver saw my face and let out a sound somewhere between a sob and a laugh. "Now you know," he whispered. I didn't write him a ticket. Didn't say another word. I just stepped back, waved him on, and watched his taillights disappear into the black. When I finally sat back in my cruiser, I realized my hands were trembling so badly I could hardly hold the wheel. I sat there for a long time, staring at the empty passenger seat beside me. Empty, clean, no indentation, no frost. But I couldn't shake the thought. What if I just couldn't see it yet? What if, right then, something was buckled in next to me, watching me, the same way it had been watching them? That night, when I got home, I didn't go inside right away. I sat in my driveway with the engine off, staring at the passenger seat of my own car, afraid to look directly. And then, slowly, a patch of condensation bloomed on the window, right where someone's breath would be. They always tell you don't pick up hitchhikers. Not because of ghosts, but because of danger. You never know who you're dealing with. People carry knives, guns, worse, and a deputy should know better than anyone. But that night, the rules didn't feel so clear. It was after midnight, late spring, the kind of night when the air carries a damp chill from the river. I was driving back along County Road 14, a stretch of two-lane blacktop that cuts through nothing but fields and woods for miles. No gas stations, no lights, just the occasional mailbox marking a farmhouse set back from the road. That's when I saw her. She was walking along the shoulder, barefoot, wearing nothing but a white dress. The fabric hung limp against her, thin enough that I could see the pale line of her collarbone even in the sweep of my headlights. At first, I thought maybe she'd been in a wreck. Maybe she'd wandered off from a broken-down car. That happens sometimes out there. Folks walk to the next town and hope they don't get clipped by a semi. But I slowed as I came up behind her, and there wasn't a car in sight. No tire tracks in the gravel, no hazard lights flashing in the dark. Just her, moving one step at a time, steady and slow. Like she didn't care if it took her all night to get wherever she was going. I rolled the cruiser alongside her and hit the window switch. "You all right, ma'am?" I called out. She stopped walking but didn't answer right away. Just stood there with her arms hanging loose at her sides, her hair falling straight and dark against the white of her dress. I felt a chill then, though the heater was on. "Need a ride somewhere?" I asked. She finally turned her head, just enough for me to see her face in the glow of the spotlight. She was young, maybe late 20s, though her skin looked pale and worn, like she hadn't slept in days. Her eyes were wide but not wild, more like empty. "Yes," she said, her voice so soft I almost didn't catch it. "Thank you." I unlocked the passenger door. She opened it carefully, slid inside, and folded her hands in her lap. She didn't smell of sweat or dirt like I expected. Instead, there was this faint scent, sweet, old-fashioned. "Like lilacs. Where you headed?" I asked, pulling back onto the road. "Home," she said simply. "Where's home?" She looked straight ahead, not at me. "Down the road." "Just a little farther," I nodded, though my stomach twisted. Because down the road didn't mean much out there. It could be 5 minutes or 50. Her feet caught my eye as I drove. They were bare, pale against the floorboard, but clean. No mud, no cuts, no gravel stuck to her skin. I'd driven that stretch 1,000 times. Sharp gravel shoulders, weeds, broken glass in places. No way you walk it barefoot without bleeding. I cleared my throat. "You from around here?" She smiled faintly, like she was humoring me. "I've been here a long time." Something about the way she said it made the hair on my arms stand up. The road stretched on, black and empty. My headlights carved tunnels through the trees. Every so often, I'd glance at her. She sat perfectly still, hands folded, eyes forward. Not nervous, not tired, just patient. After a while, she spoke again, her voice barely above a whisper. "You shouldn't be out here this late," I forced a chuckle. "That's my job. Keeps me busy." She turned her head slightly, and her eyes caught the dim glow of the dash lights. They looked darker than before. "Busy," she repeated almost to herself. Then she faced forward again. I gripped the wheel tighter. We drove in silence for a long stretch. I started to wonder if I should press her for more details, maybe radio in, let dispatch know I had a passenger. But something held me back. A strange weight in the air, like speaking too loud would break something fragile. Finally, she lifted a hand and pointed. "Here, turn here." I slowed, squinting through the windshield. There was no road there, just a narrow dirt path overgrown with weeds, barely visible in the headlights. I knew that land. It was an old farmstead abandoned years ago. Barn collapsed, house burned down in the 70s. Nothing left but the stone chimney. "Are you sure?" I asked carefully. She turned to me then, fully this time. Her face was calm, almost serene, but her eyes seemed deeper than before. "Like staring into water at night?" "Yes," she said. "This is home." I pulled over at the edge of the path, heart pounding. Every instinct screamed at me not to drive down there, not to go where she was asking. She reached for the door handle. "Wait," I said quickly. "You want me to walk you down? Make sure you get there safe?" Her hand paused. Then she gave that faint smile again. "No, you've already done enough." And before I could react, she opened the door and stepped out barefoot onto the gravel. I leaned across the seat. "Ma'am, are you sure?" But she was already walking. One slow step at a time, same as before. The white dress glowing faintly in my headlights. I sat there with the engine idling, watching her drift down that overgrown path. Then, halfway to where the woods swallowed her, she stopped. She turned, just enough for me to see her face one last time. And though she was too far to catch every detail, I swear her eyes looked darker than the night around her. She lifted a hand like a wave. Then she turned again and walked into the trees. The white of her dress faded between the branches until there was nothing but darkness. I waited. 5 minutes. 10. Finally, I killed the lights and stepped out, my boots crunching against the gravel. The night pressed in thick and silent. I walked to the edge of the path, shone my flashlight down the line of weeds and broken branches. Empty. No footprints. No sign of her at all. Just silence. When I got back into the cruiser, the faint scent of lilac still clung to the passenger seat, and the seatbelt was buckled. I couldn't sleep the next night, or the one after that. It wasn't just the image of her, the woman in white, stepping barefoot into the trees like she belonged there. It was the feeling she left behind. That faint perfume clinging to the passenger seat, the way the seatbelt was buckled, neat and secure, though she hadn't touched it when she climbed in. I told myself it was exhaustion. Deputies see strange things all the time. Late-night accidents, drunk wanderers, domestic calls that leave your head buzzing long after you clock out. I tried to file her away as just another strange call. But deep down I knew better, and then I saw the wristband. It was the following Friday. I was back on County Road 14, same time of night, same stretch of blacktop. I told myself I wasn't looking for her, but that was a lie. My eyes kept darting to the shoulder, to the dark edges of the trees. Every curve I rounded, I half expected to see her again. White dress, bare feet, patient steps. I told myself if I saw her again, I'd radio it in. Get back up. Do it by the book. The road was empty for miles. I thought maybe that was the end of it. Maybe she was just some lost soul who wandered off and found her way home after all. And then, just past mile marker 6, my headlights caught movement. She was there, walking the same way as before. Same dress, same slow, steady stride. Only this time she was on the opposite side of the road. I slowed, heart hammering. Part of me wanted to keep driving, pretend I hadn't seen her. But the cruiser rolled to a crawl, and before I knew it, I was pulling alongside. "Evening," I said, my voice tight. She turned her head, just like last time. Same pale face, same eyes too wide and too calm. "Need a lift?" I asked, though my throat was dry. She nodded once. "Yes, thank you." The words were identical, like she was reading from a script. I unlocked the door. She slid in, folding her hands in her lap again. The faint lilac scent filled the cab. For a long stretch, we didn't speak. The road hummed under the tires. My eyes kept flicking toward her, then back to the windshield. That's when I saw it, on her left wrist, peeking from the sleeve of her dress. A hospital wristband. My pulse jumped. I tried not to stare, but in the glow of the dash lights, I could just make out the faded writing. A name blurred with age. But the date, that's what froze me. 5 years earlier. The band was worn thin, frayed at the edges, like it had never been taken off. I cleared my throat. "You been to the hospital recently?" Her head tilted slightly, but her gaze stayed fixed ahead. "Yes," I hesitated. "Everything all right?" She smiled faintly. "I came home." I tightened my grip on the wheel. The silence that followed felt heavier than before. I kept glancing at the band, the way it pressed into her pale skin like it had grown into her wrist. Finally, I couldn't take it. "Ma'am, do you know today's date?" Her smile faded. She turned her head, just enough for me to see the hollow stillness in her eyes. "Does it matter?" she asked softly. I swallowed hard. "It might." She looked at me for a long moment, then turned back to the dark road. We drove on. The trees blurred past, mile after mile. My thoughts twisted, scrambled. That band, 5 years old. That wasn't possible. No one wears a hospital tag for 5 years straight. No one looks exactly the same half a decade later, unless she wasn't alive. I shook the thought out, forcing myself to focus. "Where are you headed this time?" Her voice was calm, patient. "Home?" The same answer as before. But this time she didn't point. She didn't lift her hand. She just sat there, watching the road as if she knew exactly where we were going. I slowed as we came near the old farmstead. The same path cutting into the trees. My stomach sank. "You mean here?" I asked. She smiled faintly. "Yes." I pulled over again, gravel crunching under the tires. My hands shook as I shifted into park. She reached for the handle, same as last time. Before she could step out, I said quickly, "Wait, can I see your wristband?" Her hand froze. Slowly, she turned back to me. Her eyes glinted in the dim light, unreadable. "You already saw it," she whispered. The lilac scent grew stronger, almost suffocating. Then she opened the door and slipped out, white dress trailing in the headlights. I leaned across the seat. "Ma'am, please, just wait a second." But she was already walking, barefoot and silent, down the overgrown path. Same patient stride, same white glow fading into the trees. I gritted my teeth, grabbed the flashlight, and stepped out. This time I followed. The weeds crunched under my boots. The beam cut across broken branches, stones, shadows. But the farther I went, the heavier the air felt, thick, cold. And then 20 yards in, I stopped, because the path was empty. She was gone. The woods around me were silent, too silent. No crickets, no wind through the trees. Just the sound of my own breathing. I swung the beam in a slow arc. Nothing. Then I looked down. At my feet lay something small, half buried in the dirt. I crouched, heart pounding, and brushed it off. A hospital wristband, the same date. 5 years earlier, the plastic was cold, as if it had been lying there for hours, or years. I stood frozen, the flashlight shaking in my hand. When I looked up, the path was empty, just darkness pressing close. I backed away slowly, every step heavier than the last. When I finally reached the cruiser, the scent of lilac still clung to the seat. The seatbelt was buckled again, and on the passenger floor, lying neat and folded, was the hospital wristband I'd just picked up. I swore to myself that if I ever saw her again, I wouldn't just let her walk off into the dark. No more pretending. No more trying to explain it away. I'd take her to the station. Get someone else to see or hear her. Prove I wasn't losing my mind. That was the plan, at least. It was almost 2 weeks later when she showed up again. Same stretch of County Road 14, same late hour. By then, I'd started to dread my own night shift. Every time my headlights swept across the trees, I half expected that pale dress to appear. Some nights she didn't. But when she finally did, it was almost a relief. Almost. She was walking with her head down this time, her long hair falling across her face. When she lifted it, her eyes met mine through the glass. Calm, wide, unblinking. My chest tightened. My palms went slick on the wheel. I slowed, rolled the cruiser up beside her, and leaned across the seat. "Evening," I said, though my voice cracked. She tilted her head. "Evening. You need a ride?" "Yes, thank you." The same words. Always the same words. I swallowed hard. "All right. But this time, I'm taking you somewhere safe. We'll get you some help." She nodded once, as if she already knew. I unlocked the door. She slid in without hesitation, folding her hands neatly in her lap. The scent of lilacs filled the cab again. It was stronger this time. Too strong. I forced myself to focus on the road as I pulled away. My heart pounded. "You ever been to the sheriff's office before?" I asked. She didn't answer. I glanced at her. She was watching me now. Not the road. Not the trees. Just me. Her lips curved faintly like the shadow of a smile. "Yes," my throat tightened. "When?" Her gaze didn't waver. "A long time ago." I turned my eyes back to the windshield, forcing my grip steady. The road stretched ahead, black and endless. "You'll be all right," I muttered, more to myself than to her. "We'll get this sorted." But the cab was thick with silence. I kept checking the rearview mirror. She was there in the back seat, her dress glowing faintly in the dash light. Always sitting perfectly still, hands folded, eyes calm. The station was 20 minutes away. I kept counting the miles. At mile 5, I told myself to breathe. At mile 10, I told myself this would finally prove it. Someone else would see her. Someone else would have to believe me. At mile 15, I checked the mirror again and froze. The seat was empty. My pulse jumped. I whipped my head around. The back seat was bare. No white dress. No folded hands. Just shadows. The scent of lilacs lingered, cloying and heavy, but she was gone. I slammed the brakes, gravel spitting under the tires. My flashlight rattled against the console. "Ma'am?" My voice shook. I turned in the seat, searching the back. "Where are you?" Nothing. I leaned over, yanking the rear door open. The night air rushed in cold and empty. The seatbelt lay loose across the cushion, buckled into place though no one had touched it. I felt my stomach drop. Because there, pressed into the fabric of the seat, were the faint impressions of her legs, as if she'd been sitting there just seconds ago. My breathing grew ragged. I stumbled out, flashlight beam cutting through the night. The road stretched out empty in both directions. Not a trace of her. No footsteps in the gravel. No sound in the trees. She hadn't opened the door. Hadn't moved past me. She had simply vanished. I stood there shaking, the smell of lilacs clinging to my uniform. When I finally climbed back into the cruiser, the air inside was colder than the night outside. My hands shook as I gripped the wheel. I kept the headlights fixed on the dark road, afraid to look in the mirror again. The rest of the drive felt endless. Every shadow in the trees pressed close. Every mile marker crawled past like it was mocking me. When I pulled into the lot behind the station, I killed the engine and sat in silence, trying to catch my breath. The seatbelt in the back was still buckled, neat, tidy, waiting. And when I opened the door, the scent of lilacs rolled out into the night. I couldn't explain it. I still can't. All I know is she was there, and then she wasn't. And somehow, that was worse than anything else. I didn't talk about her for a few days. Not at the station, not at home, not even to myself. The vanishing, it rattled me in a way nothing else ever had. It wasn't like the other strange calls you get in this line of work. Domestic disputes, meth heads out of their minds, folks claiming UFOs. This was different. I had her in the back seat. I could smell the lilacs. I could feel her eyes on me, and then nothing. So I kept it locked inside, chewing on it in silence. Every time I looked in the rearview mirror of my cruiser, I half expected to see her sitting there again. Pale dress glowing, hands folded, eyes steady, but the seat stayed empty. 3 nights later, I was sitting at the desk, finishing reports, when Deputy Collins came in late. He slammed his cap down on the counter, pale as a sheet. "You're not going to believe this," he muttered. I looked up. "Try me." He hesitated, then rubbed a hand down his face. "Out on County Road 14, just before the turnoff to the quarry. I damn near hit some woman walking right in the lane." My stomach turned cold. What did she look like?" I asked, though I already knew. Collins stared at me. "White dress, long hair. Didn't even flinch when I laid on the horn. I locked up the brakes so hard my tires are still smoking." My chest tightened. "She was just standing there," he went on, middle of the road. "Didn't move, didn't run. I got out, shined the light around. Gone. Just gone." He shook his head. "Man, I thought I was losing it. Thought maybe I nodded off, but I swear to God she was there." I sat frozen, because this was the first time someone else had seen her. The first time it wasn't just me. Collins leaned in closer. "You've worked nights longer than me. You ever seen her before?" My throat went dry. I wanted to tell him everything. About the rides, the smell of lilacs, the way she watched me from the back seat. About how she vanished right before we hit the station. But the words wouldn't come. Instead, I said, "You sure it wasn't just someone from town? Maybe drunk, wandering?" He shook his head hard. "No, I know what I saw. She wasn't right. She just stood there, like she wanted me to hit her, like she was waiting." The room fell quiet. The radio crackled in the corner, filling the silence. Collins finally sighed, grabbed his cap, and muttered something about needing air. He walked out, boots heavy on the floor. I sat there, staring at the paperwork in front of me, my pulse pounding in my ears. It wasn't just me anymore. Later that night, I drove the same stretch of road, slow, headlights cutting through the trees. Every curve felt sharper. Every shadow seemed thicker. The gravel shoulders looked like graves dug out of the dirt. I imagined her standing there, white dress pressed against the dark. I imagined the sound of tires skidding, the jolt of impact, the soft thud of a body rolling across the hood. But the road stayed empty. Still, my hands gripped the wheel until my knuckles whitened. The next morning, Collins cornered me by the coffee machine. His eyes were bloodshot, his hands shaking as he held the styrofoam cup. "Couldn't sleep," he muttered. "Every time I close my eyes, I see her face. Or what I think was her face. You know how sometimes you can't really remember the details, but the feeling sticks? That's what it's like. The feeling's worse than the sight." I nodded slowly. I knew exactly what he meant. He studied me. "You're awfully quiet. You sure you never saw her out there before?" I hesitated, then shook my head. "Not like you did." It was a lie, but I wasn't ready to share it. Not yet, because the more I thought about her, the more I felt like speaking her name out loud would make her stronger. Like the memory wasn't just mine anymore. It was hers, feeding off me. A couple nights later, dispatch got another call. A trucker had pulled off near the quarry road, shaken up, saying some woman had walked straight across the highway in front of him. Said he'd swerved hard, almost flipped the rig. By the time we got there, the road was clear. The man was trembling, knuckles white around his steering wheel. "She didn't look alive," he said. "That's the only way I can put it. She wasn't moving like a person should. Just drifting, like her feet weren't even touching the ground." Collins shot me a look, eyes wide. I kept mine on the asphalt, pretending to jot down notes. But inside, I felt sick. Because the pattern was clear now. She wasn't just for me anymore. She was spreading, showing herself to others. Standing in the road, waiting for tires to spin. That night, back in my cruiser, I sat in the dark, engine idling. The air was still, heavy, almost wet with the smell of summer earth. I thought about the back seat, about the impression she left in the cushion. The seatbelt buckled with no hands. I couldn't shake the image of her standing in front of Colin's car, unmoving, almost daring him. I whispered into the empty cab. "What do you want from us?" My voice sounded too loud in the silence. For a moment I swore I caught the faintest whiff of lilacs again. Sweet, cloying, wrong, and the hairs on my arms stood straight. I glanced in the rear view. The seat was empty, but I couldn't stop staring into it, waiting for the glow of her dress to bloom in the dark, waiting for her hands to fold neatly in her lap, waiting for the moment she decided I wasn't just a driver anymore, but a passenger. It was close to midnight when the call came in. A vehicle had been sitting out near the quarry road for hours. Black SUV, lights off, engine running, tires spinning slow in the gravel like it was trying to claw its way out of the earth. That stretch of road doesn't get much traffic. Locals avoid it after dark. Too many blind turns, too many accidents over the years. It's the kind of place where headlights come and go, but shadows stay. I didn't think much of it at first. Probably someone passed out drunk behind the wheel, or a couple sneaking off, too stupid to realize how obvious they looked. Still, it was my job to check. When I pulled up, the dust kicked up behind my cruiser drifted straight into the beam of the SUV's taillights. They glowed faint red, hazy through the grit, like a dying fire in the woods. The tires were still spinning, not fast, just slow enough to keep crunching in the gravel, dragging small stones in circles. A dry, grinding sound that set my teeth on edge. I killed my engine, left the headlights aimed right at it. The SUV didn't move. For a moment, I just sat there, watching, trying to figure out why someone would let their car sit like that. Why they hadn't floored it, or at least killed the ignition. The gravel under the tires looked chewed up, restless, like it had been clawed for hours. Finally, I stepped out. The night air was heavy, damp with the smell of pine and wet stone. My boots crunched as I made my way closer. "Evening," I called. My voice sounded small in the dark. No answer. The driver's side window was up, tinted glass reflecting my flashlight. I couldn't see in. I tapped the beam against the glass, hard enough to sting my knuckles. Still nothing. The engine purred. The tires dragged. A steady grind that didn't change no matter how close I got. I walked around to the passenger side. The beam of my light slid across the rear seats. Empty. At least, empty from what I could tell. Black leather. No movement. Finally, I circled to the driver's side again and tried the handle. It clicked open. The door swung outward, the dome light spilling on the gravel, and the seat was empty. No driver. No one at all. But the engine was still running. I froze there, one hand on the doorframe, staring at the leather seat. It looked used. The kind of sag you only get after hours of someone sitting there. The seatbelt was twisted, pulled tight, like it had been stretched across a body, but there was no one inside. I leaned in slowly, my flashlight shaking just enough to make the shadows crawl across the dash. The air smelled faintly of cologne, sharp and clean, but underneath it was something else, something sour. The keys were in the ignition, turned, engine humming steady. I swallowed hard and reached for the gear shift. It was locked in park. The tires were still dragging like the car thought it was moving, but it wasn't going anywhere. I turned the wheel gently. It resisted, stiff, like someone was holding it in place. That's when I noticed something else. The rear-view mirror. It wasn't aimed at the driver's seat. It was tilted down, sharp, pointed directly at the empty back seat. I felt my chest tighten. Because whoever had been here, they weren't watching the road. They were watching something behind them. I pulled back, scanning the tree line with my light. The woods pressed close, thick and black. Every branch looking like a hand. Nothing moved. Still, the hairs on my neck stood up. I thought about calling it in right there. But something in me wanted to understand first. To know what I was really looking at before I brought anyone else into it. So I leaned back into the SUV, hands shaking now, and clicked off the ignition. The engine sputtered, then died. The tires stopped spinning. For the first time all night, the silence hit me. Deep, heavy, wrong. I stood there, waiting for the sound of an animal, the wind, anything. But the night just pressed in closer. Finally, I shut the door, the thud echoing too loud in the still air. I walked back to my cruiser, but I didn't start it right away. I just sat there staring at the SUV through the windshield. My headlights washed over it, making the black paint gleam like wet stone. It looked dead now, just a car abandoned on the side of a forgotten road, but I couldn't shake the image of that mirror. Tilted down, watching the empty seat, or the way the tires kept spinning long after the driver was gone. When I filed the report, I kept it simple. Vehicle found abandoned, engine running. No driver on scene. That's it. I didn't mention the seatbelt pulled tight. I didn't mention the mirror, because I didn't know how to explain it without sounding like I'd lost it. and maybe I had. But even now, when I close my eyes, I can still hear the gravel grinding under those tires. Slow, steady, endless, like the road itself was chewing. And sometimes, late at night, I swear I hear it again, out there in the dark, waiting. I told myself I wouldn't go back out there. I'd filed the report. I'd done my part, but the SUV stayed in my head. I kept seeing it in my mind, sitting out there alone, engine humming, tires dragging across gravel like it wanted to keep moving even without a driver. I barely slept that night, and when I did, I dreamed of it. I dreamed I was standing in front of the driver's side window again, staring at myself in the black glass. Only in the dream, my reflection didn't move when I did. The next evening, I drove back out. I didn't even tell dispatch. I just wanted to see it one more time, convince myself it was nothing. The SUV was still there. It hadn't been towed. No one had come for it. It sat right where I'd left it, off to the side of the road, gravel torn up beneath the tires, the hood pointing at the tree line like it was waiting for something to come out. But this time, the windows were darker. I don't mean tinted. I mean black. Glossy, solid black, like someone had painted them over during the night. I stepped out of my cruiser, leaving the headlights on, washing the side of the SUV in pale beams. My boots sank into the loose gravel as I got closer, crunching louder than I remembered. The air around it felt wrong, still heavy, as if sound couldn't escape it. I told myself it was just a trick of the light. Maybe I hadn't noticed before how deep the tint was. Maybe it had always been this dark. But as I stood there, flashlight in hand, I realized something else. The SUV was humming again. The engine was on. Even though I knew I'd shut it off the night before. Even though I remembered twisting the key and hearing it choke out. Now it purred, steady as ever. I walked to the driver's side, heart hammering in my chest. The window looked like polished stone. I couldn't even see the faint outline of a seat inside, just my own reflection staring back at me. Pale face, wide eyes. I raised the flashlight, angled it at the glass. The beam didn't penetrate. It just bounced back. "Anyone in there?" I said, my voice catching halfway through. Nothing. I pressed my hand against the glass. Cold. Too cold for a car that had supposedly been running for who knows how long. That was when I noticed something faint. The smallest flicker of movement in the corner of my reflection. Not me. Not the beam of the light. Something behind me. I spun around, flashlight cutting across the empty road. Nothing. Just the gravel. The woods pressing in close and the hum of the engine behind me. When I turned back, the driver's side window wasn't reflecting me anymore. It was dark, completely dark, like staring into a hole. I staggered back, nearly tripping over the gravel. My first thought was to run. Get back in the cruiser, call it in, let someone else deal with it. But I couldn't. Something in me needed to know. Needed to see. So I leaned forward again, hands trembling as I cupped my face to the glass. My breath fogged faintly against it. This time, the flashlight seemed to catch. Just barely. A thin blade of light cutting through the black. Enough to show me what was sitting in the driver's seat. A mannequin. At least, that's what it looked like. Pale skin, smooth. No details on the face, just the faintest ridges where a nose and lips should be. It sat upright, hands on the wheel, head tilted slightly toward the mirror, like it had been waiting for me. I stumbled back, the light jerking across the gravel. My first instinct was to laugh, to tell myself it was a prank. Some sick joke a local kid had set up, but my gut told me different. The SUV had been empty last night. I knew that. I'd opened the door, shined my light across the seat, and there had been nothing. Now there was a mannequin sitting there. And the worst part? Its head was tilted toward me now. I hadn't seen it move, but the angle was different. It wasn't staring into the mirror anymore. It was staring out the window, right at me. My throat went dry. I wanted to reach for the handle again, fling the door open, rip it out, and prove it was just plastic. But I couldn't move. I couldn't even breathe. The longer I looked, the less it seemed like a mannequin. Its skin wasn't perfectly smooth. It had faint lines, creases around the neck. The shape of the hands gripping the wheel was too natural, too detailed. It looked almost real. Almost. I backed away slowly, every step loud against the gravel. The engine hummed on, steady like a pulse. When I finally reached my cruiser, I climbed in fast, slammed the door, and locked it. My hands shook on the wheel. Through the windshield, I kept my headlights aimed at the SUV. It sat there, still as stone, with that pale figure behind the wheel. Watching. I don't know how long I sat there, just staring. My chest ached from holding my breath, from waiting for it to move again. Finally, I put the cruiser in reverse, backed up until the beams started to fade off the SUV, then turned and drove. I didn't look in the rearview mirror. I couldn't. Back at the station, I didn't know what to write. I didn't know what words would make sense. I just said I'd returned to the site and found no one. Left it at that. But when I lay down later, I couldn't close my eyes. Every time I did, I saw that blank face behind the wheel. Not quite human. Not quite fake. Something in between. And the worst part was knowing that I hadn't imagined it. Because when I closed my eyes, I didn't just see its face. I heard the gravel, too. That endless grinding of tires that never stopped. And deep down, I knew I hadn't seen it for the last time. I thought leaving the SUV behind would be the end of it. I drove away. I told myself I'd never go near it again, but it didn't leave me alone. The next morning, I went back through the dashcam footage. It was routine. Anytime something weird happened on patrol, we checked the tape. A way to cover ourselves in case anyone asked questions later. At first it was normal. Just the gravel road stretching out under my headlights, the SUV sitting in the glow. I watched myself get out, flashlight in hand, walk toward it. My boots looked clumsy on the screen, like I was wading through molasses. I remembered every step, every thought running through my head, the silence pressing down. But then I saw something I didn't remember. As I stood at the driver's side, leaning toward the window, the mannequin's head moved. Not much. Just a slow turn, deliberate, unnatural. It angled toward me, toward the camera. Its face, or whatever it had instead of a face, seemed to lock on. Blank, pale, nothing there but the faint impression of features that weren't finished. I froze watching it. My stomach flipped, and I had to pause the video, step away from the desk, because in the moment, out there on the road, I hadn't seen it move. I'd only seen where it ended up, staring at me through the glass, but on the dash cam, it was clear. It had turned its head. It had chosen to look at me. My hands shook as I hit play again. I wanted to believe maybe it was the light, maybe some trick of reflection, but no. The tape showed it clearly. Its head pivoted slow and smooth until it was staring directly at the lens. At me. I shut it off. I couldn't watch anymore. I told myself not to mention it, not to show anyone. If I did, I'd just sound crazy. They'd think I was messing with the footage, trying to pull some prank, so I kept it to myself. But that night, it followed me home. I live out on the edge of town. Small house, gravel driveway, woods on both sides. Quiet place usually, too quiet sometimes. I went to bed late, still restless from what I'd seen. Sleep came in fits. Every time I drifted off, I dreamed of black windows and blank faces. At some point in the night, I woke up to a sound, a low, steady grinding. It took me a second to place it. I thought maybe it was the wind, branches against the siding. But no, it was tires, spinning, slow, steady, chewing through gravel. My stomach dropped. I sat up, heart pounding, straining to listen. It wasn't my imagination. The sound was real. Right outside, I crept to the window, pulled the curtain just an inch. My driveway was empty. No cars. No headlights. Just pale moonlight on gravel. But the sound didn't stop. It was louder now, like the tires were turning right beneath me, grinding stone against stone. I backed away from the glass, chest tight, breathing shallow. The sound filled the whole house, like it was vibrating through the walls. I wanted to believe it was just in my head, that maybe I'd been dreaming, and this was just the tail end of it bleeding through into waking. But then I smelled it. Exhaust. Faint, oily, choking exhaust drifting through the room, like someone had left an engine idling in the hall. My throat tightened. I coughed, stumbled toward the front door, half expecting to see headlights flooding the windows, but when I yanked it open, nothing. The yard was empty. The air outside was still. The grinding stopped. The smell lingered, though hanging around me like a warning. I stood there for a long time, staring out at the gravel drive, waiting for something to show itself. Nothing did. Finally, I shut the door, locked it, and sat there with my back against it, too afraid to move. The silence felt worse than the sound had, like it was holding its breath, waiting for me to let my guard down. The next day at the station, I tried to pretend nothing had happened, but I must have looked pale, worn down. One of the guys asked if I was sick. I just shook my head. I wanted to say something. Tell them about the sound, the smell, the tape. But I didn't, because deep down, I knew it wasn't something they could fix. Whatever had followed me home wasn't a person. It wasn't something you could arrest. It was something else, and it had noticed me. That night, I didn't even try to sleep. I sat up in the living room with the lights on, staring at the front door, listening. At some point, I must have nodded off in the chair, because when I opened my eyes again, it was still dark. The clock said 3:07 a.m., and the sound was back. Tires spinning, gravel grinding. Only this time, it wasn't outside. It was closer. The sound seemed to crawl under the floorboards, circling the house. I gripped the armrests, every muscle tight, praying it would fade, but it didn't. And then, through the living room window, I saw it. Not headlights, just a faint glow, a pale reflection sliding across the glass, as if something tall and blank had leaned in close. I didn't move. I didn't breathe. The glow lingered a moment, and then it was gone. The sound of the tires slowed, dragging, like something pulling away, and then silence. I don't know what it wants from me. I only know that it hasn't let go, because now, every night I hear it again, sometimes faint, sometimes so loud it rattles the walls, tires spinning, dragging through gravel, circling the house like a predator, and each time, I'm more afraid it's not just circling, it's getting closer, it's dragging me back. The worst sound an officer can hear isn't gunfire. It isn't screaming, it's silence, or something that should be silence, but isn't. For me, it started on a night that felt like any other. I was out on patrol, roads empty, the kind of quiet where you almost forget you're supposed to be working. Just the hum of the cruiser and the soft hiss of the radio, always alive in the background, even when no one's talking. That night, the air felt heavier, still, thick, like the world had pressed pause. I pulled off onto an old service road, one of those stretches that doesn't really go anywhere. A dead end near the fields. I saw a car pulled off on the shoulder, lights off, parked in the dark. It didn't look right. I slowed, headlights sweeping over it. An older sedan, nothing special. Just sitting there, like it had been waiting. I called it in. Habit, routine. You see something odd, you let dispatch know. I pressed the button on the mic. Unit 12. Possible abandoned vehicle. Service road by mile marker 47. Running plates now. Static, not silence. Static. The kind that hisses and pops, almost alive. I frowned, tried again. Dispatch, this is 12, do you copy? More static. I adjusted the dial, checked the antenna. Everything looked fine. But when I pressed the mic again, all I got was that same dead frequency, like no one was on the other end. I sat there, staring at the radio, waiting for the usual click. The voice that had been a lifeline on every shift I'd ever worked. But nothing came back. The cruiser felt smaller suddenly. The dark outside pressed in tighter. I tried the car computer, entered the plate. The system froze, screen flickering before it just went blank. I rubbed my eyes, muttering under my breath. This wasn't normal. Not the radio, not the computer. One failing, sure. But both out here? It made the world feel emptier than I'd ever known it could. I stepped out of the cruiser, gravel crunching under my boots. The air was colder than it should have been, and for a second I thought maybe I'd see my breath. But the night held it still, like the air was too heavy to move. The sedan was 20 feet ahead. My flashlight cut across its back window, then its trunk. Then the driver's side. No movement inside, but the car's tires were sunk deep into the shoulder, like it had been parked there for days. I circled it slow, beam tracing the glass. The windows reflected nothing, just black surfaces staring back at me. I leaned closer to the driver's side. Empty. At least, that's what I thought. But when the beam caught the rear-view mirror, I froze, because for half a second, I could have sworn I saw eyes, not in the back seat, not in the reflection of the front, but staring from the mirror itself. Blink, and they were gone. I stepped back fast, light shaking in my hand. My pulse thudded in my ears. I told myself it was a trick. The beam, the angle, nothing more, but I didn't believe it. Not fully. I pulled the mic again, desperation creeping in. "Dispatch, come on! Do you read? Unit 12 requesting response." The hiss filled the cruiser, spilling out of the speaker into the night. I turned the knob all the way down, but the static didn't stop. It kept whispering through, faint, broken, like it wasn't coming from the radio anymore, like it was leaking from the air itself. I slammed the door shut, trying to block it out, but it was inside with me now. For the first time in years, I felt completely cut off. No lifeline, no voice on the other end. Just me, the dark, and a dead frequency that wouldn't let go. I thought about leaving right then, just throwing the cruiser in gear and driving until the radio came back. But something in me needed to know. Needed to be sure. I approached the sedan again, hands clammy against the flashlight. The closer I got, the more wrong it felt. The car wasn't dusty, wasn't dirty, like it hadn't been sitting for days at all, like it had just appeared. I touched the hood. Cold. Too cold. The driver's door creaked when I pulled it. Empty. No keys. No personal items. Nothing at all. Just a car-shaped void in the middle of nowhere. I stood there, breathing shallow, trying to make sense of it, and then the static changed. It wasn't hissing anymore. It was shaping into words. At first it was faint, buried in the noise. But slowly, syllables broke through, soft and broken. 12. I froze. Unit 12. It was my call sign, my number. Whispered through the hiss like a voice struggling through water. "Do you copy?" I staggered back, nearly dropping the flashlight. My throat felt tight, my chest locking up. That wasn't dispatch. I knew that voice, because it was mine. It was my voice coming through the static, asking if I copied, asking if I was there. I slammed the door shut on the sedan, stumbling back toward my cruiser, every nerve screaming at me to leave. The radio flared again, louder this time, my own voice breaking in and out of the static. "This is 12. Come back!" I threw the cruiser into reverse, gravel spraying, tires fighting for grip. The voice followed. "Unit 12. Do you copy? Come back." I didn't stop until I hit the main road, heart pounding, hands locked on the wheel. The radio went dead. No static, no voice, just silence. And somehow, that was worse. Since that night, I can't shake it. I keep the radio on, even off duty. I tell myself I just like the background noise, but the truth is, I'm waiting to hear myself again, because if the dead frequency found me once, it'll find me again, and next time, I'm not sure I'll be the one holding the mic. I didn't tell anyone about the first time, about hearing my own voice come through the static. How do you explain something like that? You can't, and even if you could, what would it make you sound like? Crazy, unfit, maybe even dangerous with a badge, so I kept my mouth shut. For a few nights after, things were normal. Too normal, almost. Like the world was trying too hard to prove nothing had happened. The radio worked. Dispatch answered. I drove the same routes, checked the same empty roads, but every time the speaker hissed with routine chatter, my stomach tightened. I waited for it to slip, for the sound to bend back into that whisper I knew too well. It didn't. Not right away, but the silence before it came was almost worse. It happened on the fourth night. I was parked off County 9, the cruiser idling low, headlights stretching across a patch of woods that locals swore was haunted. I'd never believed that crap. I still don't know if I do, but I remember staring at the tree line and thinking, that's the kind of place where something waits. I pressed the mic without even realizing it. Unit 12, stationary on County 9, no activity to report. The reply came instantly. Not static, not silence. A voice. My voice. Copy that. 12. Hold position. My hand froze on the mic. I didn't breathe. The voice had come through clear. Not broken, not warped. It was strong, certain. It sounded more like me than I ever had. I lowered the mic slow, like the movement itself might draw attention. But then the speaker crackled again. Unit 12. My own voice. Yes? I whispered before I could stop myself. You see the woods? I swallowed hard, throat dry. Yeah, walk toward them. The cruiser's cabin seemed smaller than ever, walls pressing in on me. I shook my head. No. Negative. I'm staying put, the speaker hissed, then steadied. Don't argue, the voice said, calm, almost kind. You need to see. Get out of the car, 12. Walk toward the woods. Every hair on my arm stood on end. That wasn't dispatch. That wasn't anyone on the other end of a radio tower. That was me. Or something using me. I should have thrown the cruiser in gear, driven back to the station, pretended it was nothing. But the problem was, I believed it. I believed there was something in those woods I needed to see. And worse, the voice knew I believed it. My boots hit gravel before I could talk myself out of it. The night air was thick, colder than before, carrying the scent of damp leaves. The trees loomed ahead, black shapes folding into one another, shadows layered on shadows. I gripped the flashlight tighter, beam trembling as I swept it across the brush. Behind me, the radio hissed. Good, the voice said. Keep walking. I froze. How are you talking to me? The pause on the other end stretched too long. Long enough that I thought maybe it was gone. Then, you know how, I felt my stomach twist, because I did know. Or at least, some part of me did. The woods swallowed me whole. The beam barely cut more than a few feet in front of me. Branches clawed at my arms, crunching underfoot louder than I liked. Every instinct told me to turn back. But then the voice returned. Steadier now. Closer. You're almost there. Almost where? I whispered. You'll know. I hated how sure it sounded. How sure I sounded. I moved deeper, every step heavier. And then I saw it. At first, I thought it was a person, crouched low in the brush. But the light caught it just right, and I realized it was something else. A figure. Pale and still, not flesh. Plastic. It was a mannequin. It sat slumped against a tree, head tilted, mouth half open like it had been waiting. The same kind I'd seen before. The one in the SUV, but this one was dressed in a uniform, my uniform. The same badge, the same patches, even the same scuffed boots, and on its chest, my name tag. The air left my lungs in a single broken sound. I staggered back, beam shaking across the pale plastic skin. My radio hissed loud, cutting through the night. Closer. I shook my head, whispering, No, no, I'm done. Closer, the voice repeated, firmer this time. I clutched the mic like a lifeline. What the hell are you? The answer chilled me more than the cold air ever could. I'm you. Something cracked in me then, some thin barrier between belief and terror. I backed away fast, nearly tripping on the roots. My light swept wildly, catching nothing but endless trees. Behind me, the mannequin shifted. Not much. Just enough to tilt its head, the plastic creak carrying in the stillness. My chest seized. The radio screamed with static, my own voice breaking through in bursts. Don't! Run! Come back. We're not finished. I bolted, branches whipped my face, tore at my arms. My boots pounded the dirt, breath ripping from my lungs. But even over all of it, I heard the tires. That same grinding spin of rubber and gravel. Circling, somehow impossibly. It followed me through the trees. I didn't stop until the cruiser came into view. Headlights a beacon in the dark. I slammed the door, threw it into drive, and tore down the road. Gravel spitting out behind me. The radio went dead again. No static. No voice. Just silence. I didn't realize until I hit the main highway that my hands were bleeding, cut to ribbons from the brush. I kept driving anyway, because I knew if I stopped, if I let the night catch me again, I'd hear it. Not dispatch, not some stranger, but me, calling myself back. I've tried to reason it out since. Tell myself I was tired, maybe hallucinating. That stress can twist the mind, make you hear things. But deep down, I know that's not true. Because it wasn't random. It knew my call sign, my voice, my fear. It knew me. And the worst part? It's not done, I can feel it. Like a pressure building every night I go out. The woods are still there, waiting. And sooner or later, that voice will call me again. It'll tell me to walk back, and I don't think I'll be able to say no. I've seen strange things on this job, bodies twisted by wrecks, drunks stumbling into traffic, even the way deer eyes glow when caught in high beams. But nothing has ever unsettled me like that night on County 9. Ever since the woods, my shifts haven't felt the same. Every time I key up the mic, I expect to hear myself answer back. Sometimes I swear I almost do. There's this faint delay, like my words are bouncing off something more than radio towers, like they're echoing back from someplace I don't want to know about. I keep telling myself to let it go. To just do the job, same as always, but the road won't let me. It was just after 2 a.m. when I saw the headlights. A sedan pulled over onto the shoulder, hazards ticking slow. Routine stop. Should have been simple. I slowed behind it, tires crunching gravel, the cruiser's lights washing red and blue over the empty asphalt. I grabbed the mic out of habit. Unit 12 traffic stop, Highway 63 near mile marker 22. Static. My chest tightened. I tried again. Unit 12 traffic stop, mile marker 22. This time, a voice came back. Not dispatch. Not another officer. Me, copy, 12. Step out. I sat frozen, hand clenched around the mic. I could feel the sweat bead along my hairline. Don't listen, I thought. Don't do it again, but I opened the door anyway. The night air hit me sharp and cold. I kept one hand on my flashlight, the other resting near my sidearm. The hazards blinked steady, reflecting off the wet road, but the sedan looked empty. I leaned just enough to peer in through the driver's window. No one. Not a driver, not a passenger, nothing. I felt the bottom drop out of me, and then, over here, the voice didn't come from the radio. It came from across the road. I swung the flashlight beam toward the trees lining the opposite shoulder. At first, I thought I was looking into a mirror, because standing there, just past the guardrail, was me. Same uniform, same posture, same flashlight in hand. Every detail right down to the scuffed boots. I raised a hand, motioned for me to cross the road. I couldn't move. My legs refused. It was like my body understood something my mind hadn't caught up to yet. That thing wasn't me, but it looked like me, and it wanted me to come closer. The hazards clicked behind me, too loud, too steady. The world had narrowed to that pulsing orange light and the copycat across the road. I heard my own voice again. Not from my mouth, from him. Come on. It's safer over here. The words sank into me like hooks, because they sounded like truth, like something I'd said 100 times on stops when I was trying to calm someone down. But the longer I looked, the more wrong he became. His stance was too still, too deliberate, like he'd practiced being me but didn't know how to relax. And then I saw his face. It was mine, yes, but the smile was too wide, pulled just a little too far at the corners. I took one step back. Gravel shifted under my boots. The copy tilted his head, smile fading. His voice dropped lower, sharper. Don't fight this. You'll make it worse. I almost laughed. Almost. Because the words were ones I'd used myself, back when I was trying to get combative suspects to comply, but hearing them thrown at me. In my own voice, it froze me to the bone. I raised the mic with a shaking hand. Dispatch, this is Unit 12. Do you copy? Static. Then his voice, my voice, came through the radio speaker, perfectly in sync with his lips across the road. Unit 12, step over now. I should have run. I should have gotten back in the cruiser and left, but my boots carried me forward. One step, then another. The blacktop stretched endless between us, the yellow lines gleaming faint in the cruiser's glow. My flashlight trembled across him, though I wasn't sure why I bothered shining it. The light didn't show me anything I didn't already know. It was me, or something that wore me. The closer I got, the more details I saw. Scuffs on the belt, the faint crease of the shirt from where I always leaned on the armrest. Even the small nick on the badge from when it had caught on a door frame. He was perfect, too perfect. When I reached the center of the road, I stopped. Who are you? My voice cracked. His lips curled into that wide smile again.
Who do you think?
I shook my head hard. You're not me. You said that before, he replied, tone even, patient. But you keep following, don't you? I opened my mouth to argue, but the words wouldn't come. Because he was right. I had followed. Twice now, and some part of me had wanted to. The hazards ticked louder behind me, matching the pulse in my skull. My double raised a hand again, beckoning. You don't belong there anymore, he said. You belong here. I glanced back at the cruiser, lights strobing across empty highway. That car was mine. That life was mine. But the longer I stood, the farther away it felt. The more real he seemed. My throat tightened. I whispered, "What happens if I cross?" His smile widened. You'll see. I stood frozen at that yellow line, caught between myself and myself. The air felt thicker, heavier, like I wasn't breathing the same oxygen anymore. Every instinct screamed to run, to fight, to do anything except take one more step forward. But then I heard the tires. That slow, steady spin of rubber in gravel. The same sound that had followed me from the woods. It circled behind me, unseen, but I knew exactly what it was, and I knew what it meant. If I stayed where I was, it would catch me anyway. I don't remember making the choice, only the feeling of my boot lifting, moving across the line. The moment I did, my double's face shifted. The smile collapsed. His eyes hollowed, going dark, deeper than shadows had any right to be. And his voice, my voice, dropped into something not human at all. Good. The word was less sound, more vibration, crawling up from the asphalt into my bones. I staggered back instinctively, heart hammering, but the damage was already done. Because I'd crossed, even if only by one step. I don't know how long I stood there after that. When I blinked, the other me was gone. Just empty woods and the low hum of the cruiser's engine behind me. I was alone again. At least, that's what I told myself as I climbed back into the car. Knuckles white on the wheel, but deep down, I knew better. I hadn't imagined him. I hadn't imagined myself. Something was wearing me like a mask, and every night I go back out, every call I answer, it's getting closer to fitting me just right, closer to pulling me over to the wrong side for good.